you're gonna get me tearing up here, but I'm a very lucky man to, especially on here, getting to hear people's stories and backgrounds, and a lot of people on here are broken, right? I always say, if you're on VR chat, there's a problem with you. It doesn't matter what it is, you've just got a problem. And sadly for a lot of people, that problem is their relationship with their parents, and that could be because of their sexuality, because of abuse. I am so lucky that I grew up in a family that loved and cared for me, and hearing about people's experience in here has made me appreciate what I have way more.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sweet Talking Podcast with me, your host, Nepherti. This is episode 62 of the Sweet Talking Podcast. We've been doing it for quite a while. Thank you all so much for your continued support of what we do here. We do appreciate that so very much. Before we get started and talking with our guest this evening, I do want to take a moment to thank everyone who is watching this live. Those of you who are watching on Twitch, over at twitch.tv/Nepherti with 2 I's. Thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate you tuning in. And those of you who are watching on YouTube right now, thank you so much for being a part of that and supporting my content over at YouTube. But speaking of YouTube, I do also want to thank those of you who have been supporting me over at Patreon. Those of you who are supporting me at Patreon are basically enabling me to do what I do on YouTube, since largely what I do on YouTube gets demonetized. So I'm very grateful to all of you who have been subscribed over there. I sincerely appreciate your support, especially my Snuggle and Uwu tier members. Thank you very much for hanging out and supporting me with your subscriptions. It really makes all the difference in what we do here on the show. So thank you so much. But I will not spend too much longer talking about that. I just want to thank you guys for that. And if you are interested in participating or supporting me over at Patreon, you're more than welcome to do so at patreon.com/Nepherti. But I will repeat that at the end of tonight's show. So enough with that. We're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's guest. So our guest tonight, or today, whenever you may be watching this, is Dooley. Dooley, I'm not going to introduce Dooley. I'm going to let Dooley introduce himself. But thank you, Dooley, for being on the show. I appreciate it very much. It's good to have you, and it's really great to have a conversation with you. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. You'd like me to introduce myself now?
Well, we'll get into that in just a little bit, but I like to do a little icebreaker to kind of get things going, get the gears going.
Yeah, sure thing.
But yeah, like you and I, basically, we have met in VRChat before. We met at an event that was being thrown by the same person who's actually linked us together, or rather, kind of introduced me and let me know about your existence in the first place. 'Cause I had no idea that you were even a person before everything. Before like a couple of weeks ago, I didn't even know that you existed. So it's really great to be introduced by really awesome people, and then to be able to sit down with even more awesome people like yourself who are doing really interesting things in the VR space. So yeah, it was really great to meet you, and yeah, it was really awesome to kind of run into you.
Yep. Thanks for the kind words.
Yeah. By just out of curiosity, I know we were having a good time when we met in VRChat, but what was your first impression of me, just out of curiosity?
Oh. So, Omega, right?
Yeah.
Is the person that we met through, and they were hounding me for ages. You need to talk with Nep. You need to go talk with Nep. You need to talk with Nep. So my impression of you is that you're highly regarded by my friends. And so I went and had a chat, and you were lovely, to put it simply. And yeah, here we are.
Thank you. I really do appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much. But yeah. I always believe that it's very much natural to be attracted or to people who are doing cool stuff. So people who are doing cool stuff are attracted to people who are doing cool stuff. So, that energy is just really felt a lot in this community, and that's really what I love about at least about VRChat and about what you're doing as well. Like, there's a lot of creative energy on this platform, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
lovely to be here.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into things. So basically, if you had to introduce yourself to anyone, if it's in VRChat, we'll say in VRChat, or on your own framework, if someone's meeting for the first time, what would be, well, how would you describe yourself, and how would you introduce yourself to a person who doesn't know anything about you?
So I've thought about this question a lot over the years, mainly because I get asked a bit like, oh, who are you? What do you do? And at this stage of my life, it's been 10 years of programming and 10 years of working in Unity. So it's like, well, I've done a lot of things. What do you want to know about? But the way I generally describe who I am and what I do is I have a deep passion for virtual reality and creating stuff in virtual reality. As well as I have a deep background in normal games, building games for companies, as well as building tools for people or individuals that would like to build stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. And with regards to just kind of you as a person, like a lot of who you are as an individual, like a lot of your life has been surrounded around what you do creatively, it seems. So that's like a big part of who you are as a person. But before you got into like that sort of thing, like who was Dooley before Unity, before video game creation? Like what was that person like?
So I started my first job in game dev when I was 16. So what you're really asking me is, who was Dooley before 16? And the truth was, he was a computer builder. He was still a nerd, but he was not thinking about becoming a programmer. He was going to go into the hardware side. And then I found software, and well, it is what it is.
Okay, yeah, that's all I wrote. Okay, cool, awesome. So when it comes to like how you present yourself in VRChat, I know that all of my guests have a very specific way of how they present themselves in VRChat, and identity is a pretty big deal. Just kind of, it's a very important conversation that people are having these days. So what kind of went into your personal presentation of how you present in VRChat, and can you explain to people what that all is and what that entails?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm lucky to be getting. I'm engaged to my fiance, and she's an avatar creator. So I'm very lucky, and I get all my suits done for me, which is great. But my colors are colors, as well as my sparkles, are the big thing that I have, and that actually stems back to avatars from 5 years ago. When I was getting into VR, I never really found anything that clicked with who I was until I went over to Neos and found out that I like what's the name? Time spirits. I don't know if people are going to be even aware of what that is in the modern era.
well, I mean, just like, if people don't, you think people will know, like, what is it? Educate people.
Yeah, well, time spirits are basically they're a bunny with long ears. So you add long ears and make it more like they're in control of time. So they're normally black or white and have special colors. And when I got my index, I was running around with nubs. I didn't have fingers. So I'm there with my index like, oh, I wish I could use these, and I had no way of doing it. So we eventually picked this base, me and my fiance, to use together, and then we moved the colors and the styling from the little avatars, the time spirits, over to this. And I'm very comfortable in this these days.
Okay, nice. So is... I'm as always, all my questions are asked in good faith. Please keep that in mind.
Yep,
but like, so are time spirits like how you have like what can I say, like various species of furries? Is that something like related to that or not?
Please, you don't even have to say. I will never take offense to questions like that. Yeah. You're all good.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's between the two. It's like here, and some people consider it, some people don't consider it. It like it doesn't even have fingers. I'm willing to swap into it if you're okay with that, to show what it would look like. Up to you.
maybe in the post section we'll do that. Yeah.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. Okay, so it's somewhere in between being it's so if it's between furries and what would you say?
And that's the hard part. I don't know what to call it.
Okay.
It's very unique in that it's not sexualized. It's not got any content that's that would upset anyone. It's very much just like a void, I would even suggest. And I don't know how to describe that in a way that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, that works. That's totally fine. Like I always leave it to the person to describe like what it entails, that because they can explain it better than I can. So I'm gonna just listen and learn. So with that in mind, like I guess so is all you do are you mainly just like in Unity and asset creation and like framework creation, systems design? Is that like all you are as a person, or is there a little bit more to you? Do you do anything interesting aside from that? Aside from that, there's very, very interesting stuff for sure.
Yeah. Let me think. I'm pretty damn good at Beat Saber. I used to do that a lot. A lot of who I am and what I do is surrounded by work, so it tends to be that way for me. Yeah, I don't have many things outside of my work, and that's a sad thing to say right out loud. But the truth is, I really enjoy what I do, and there's a reason I've done it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
One thing I can touch on is my partner in life, my fiance. We met in virtual reality, and she's here physically now, and that's one thing as well. Relationships in VR and sorting through that for 5 years, online dating, and then taking that IRL. I would say that's another interesting thing about me, is actually we were able to do that journey.
Yeah, which is, I would say it's not terribly common. I mean, it doesn't seem as common, maybe because we don't hear about it as often, but I don't think that's like something that you often hear, like people actually like taking the step forward to, you meet in VR, you spend time in VR, then you move in, and then you ultimately get married, type of thing. That's pretty, it's pretty impressive.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely talk more about that in the post section too, because it seems like it's very important to you. So I would love to talk about that more, and like what that was all like, for sure. But we have a lot to cover. We have a lot of things to go over. So we'll make sure that we have room for all that stuff. All right, so let's kind of move into VR stuff. Let's just talk about like VRChat, and what that's all been for you and to you. So I'm assuming that you started in VRChat. If you did start elsewhere, I'd love to know where else in VR you started before VRChat. But if that's the case, yeah.
Yeah. So I started in Beat Saber.
Okay.
I was in a pretty sad part of my life at the time. And I wanted something to do that was both exercise but also fun, and I found VR, and I found Beat Saber, and I was like, heck yeah, I'm buying that, I'm spending the money. Goodbye money, got it, and that was the start of my journey. It was only probably a year later almost that I decided to give VRChat a go. Before that, I always thought, it's that platform. Yeah, it's that platform. The problem one. And after trying it, I went, I was very wrong. And the first day in VRChat, I cried because I'd finally met some people that not only I come from a rural town, so not only did they understand who I was a bit more, but they also could speak the same language in in my nerdiness, and that was an eye opener for me. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So even you had like a pretty significant experience being introduced to VRChat, because I know a lot of people have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said you are in a pretty sad part of your life. Like I can you share a little bit more about that and how VRChat helped you through that?
Yeah, I can. I went through a breakup, and what came with that was a rip or tear in my social life. And as you can imagine, trying to fill that void was very hard. And social VR basically filled that void for me. And that was really good.
Okay. And like you said, you actually didn't say this, but you're from Australia, yes?
Yes, I'm from Queensland, Australia.
Okay. And I'm kind of curious. You said you're in the middle of nowhere. I know like Australia has a lot of like places that are not like fully like established or like I guess industrialized, we'll say. What is that like? I should have caught this at the beginning, but I just remembered. So we'll touch on it now.
You're all good. What is it like? Well, there's shops here. But it is actually, it's not a bad place, but it's rural. I got in trouble for saying that from my dad, even though I think it technically still is. But it is a smaller town where everyone's either a farmer or they're retired. And so to find my type of people, there's maybe a handful. It's a lovely place. We have really good beaches in Australia, and it has a really lovely beach, and barely anyone on the road. So there are good things and bad things to where I live.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a trade-off. Like no matter where you live in the world, there's always good pros and cons. Like not every place is a perfect place, and every place is a complete. Well, I mean there are some really really bad places where the cons outweigh the pros. But in most cases, in most first world areas, it's generally pros and cons. You kind of live with that kind of deal. And I'm assuming you lived there your entire life.
Absolutely. Yep, born and bred here.
All right. Nice. All right, and so let's jump back to VR. You said that people in VR could speak your nerdy language, like the language of like just like people here have a different way of thinking. There's a lot of unique people here, we'll say.
Yes.
I guess what was it about that was that your only? I would say, was that the only thing that really kept you here, or was it something? Was it other things too about VRChat that really clued you in on it?
It was definitely the beginning, but then I spent the next few years diving into. I actually didn't. For the first few months, I didn't touch development, and then I did, and that was what kept me. Was building stuff in VRChat for people, getting a smile on some faces, and being able to flex my skills outside of the workplace and do it, in a more indie capacity. That was really nice.
Okay. And you said you had a not so great impression of VRChat beforehand. What was your impression, in more detail?
Oh. As people know, there's probably two sides to VRChat. There's what we at least in this scenario, when you come in individually, you get to talk to people, experience things. However, when you're getting content about VRChat, it's all the nasty things about VRChat. I don't know if you want me to go into that side, but
sure.
Sure.
You don't got to censor here.
Okay, lovely. Basically it was like hunting down pedos.
Okay.
And that's how I knew VRChat was, hey, this is not a safe place. And the truth is that's a very small population, but they're on YouTube and on, on the other platforms, they're what people see because it's negative content and it's an amplification factor with our brains, right? We always want to see negative content.
Yeah.
To our own detriment. and when I got into VRChat, I was like, oh, I'll just give it a shot. And straight away I met lovely people that I still know to this day that aren't those things, and they're lovely human beings. And I talk more with them even to this day than I do with some of my IRL friends about topics that I don't want to get into because I trust them more. And that's a crazy thought, as well. But yeah.
Yeah, like I think a lot of what people think of VRChat is a lot of like the crazy like very very active lobby, people trolling people, things of that nature. What the stuff that proliferates the VRChat category and on YouTube largely, let's say. So it's also very interesting that like you were able to find people like that. What did you do like when you first got into VRChat? And I'm assuming you jumped in like by yourself. How did you end up finding people like that? What was the process? So for people maybe new to VRChat, how'd you do that?
And sadly, this one's interesting because it's never happened again. But the way I did it was I just walked into a room and they talked to me. Back then, there wasn't as many children, right? So it was mainly adults in the public worlds. And the first people I ran into were game developers. They were lovely, and that was it. I reckon if they weren't there that day, I wouldn't be here today. And that's it's an interesting thought that VRChat's entire existence is in my mind based on those relationships and based on the first 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes of interactions.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have a lot of strong thoughts about that, like about how people first get into VRChat and how people are initially getting exposed to the platform for the first time. I think people have had a lot of suggestions or criticisms, let's say, about how VRChat should go about, first introducing people. And I think VRChat has done a fairly good job with like having portals and having group portals and those and like the home world and such. So like people can kind of get engaged with groups of people back then. But when you say back then, what does that actually mean? Like how long ago was this, and how long have you been in VRChat for?
2018, late 2018. I was a part of the Uganda Knuckles push.
Okay.
That's those videos. Like Jameski was the actual reason that I tried it in the first place, because that was the first positive content that I had seen about VRChat, and so I was a part of that hype train. And I'm very thankful that I decided to give it a shot.
So you say that if it weren't for VRChat, you probably wouldn't be here right now. What was it about VRChat and having those initial conversations that, I guess, pushed you into development? Like, what specifically about that pushed you into, I guess, becoming the person that you are now?
Yeah. I'm a game dev by trade. So by the time I was in 2018, I'd already been doing it for a year or two, and I had already been on 2 major projects, so I could code. It wasn't amazing, but I could do it. So when I got into VRChat, people were, the community I was surrounded with were also developers, avatar creators. I was very lucky to land right in there with those people. And partially their influence and the fact that I was already a game developer led me down that path. A lot of frustration later, here I am.
Yeah, like various loops and hoops and mistakes later and successes, of course, and now you're here.
Yeah.
So that's great. That's that is the journey of VRChat. And so like because you largely spend a lot of your time doing game development. How do you interface with VRChat now compared to how you used to? Like, how was that evolution from when you first started in VRChat to how you interface with VRChat nowadays?
Yeah. If we're talking interfaces, in like, we talking
like interaction, like what are you doing in VRChat? Yeah, like how you spending your time?
Yeah. So back then, I used to meet a lot of new people. That's something that's different from then till now. I've got a very large community that I'm a part of now, so it's a little different. One of the big yellow differences is my development style. Now I'm building for the future, and I'm building for people that you're going to use something. I need to have a purpose for why I'm doing something. Back then, it was all a learning experience. So I spent most of my time on throwaway projects, learning the ins and outs, trying things out. But now it's different. Right now, people rely on me to do a good job.
Okay. So in terms of like how you spend your time in VRChat, it sounds like it was very social, but nowadays, like, you're just in VRChat to get maybe a bit of a pulse on what should come next in terms of your development cycles?
Yeah, and look, you can say that, but I am still here to talk with people. I think if you're going to work on a social platform, better be social.
True. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is definitely necessary. You need to know what the people want. You have to know what's going on and how people are interacting with the different options here and different I guess features, we'll say, in VRChat.
Yeah.
So is there I like to ask this question of all my guests. What is one thing about VRChat that you really appreciate? And it can't be the community, can't be the people. And what is one thing that we'll go with that first. What is one thing that you really appreciate about VRChat?
Oh. Can't be the community. Ouch. VRChat's 50% that.
Yeah. I know. That's why it's a good question, I think. It makes people think.
Okay. No, you've done me in here. I was gonna say, like, it's the fact that I get to meet people from all around the world. That's still community, and that's still social relationships, right?
Yeah.
You're asking, like, the bed. Yeah. Okay. So, look, VRChat has done a lot of really cool things, and if I can't say those two things, then I'm gonna say the next big thing, which is UGC, or user-generated content. The fact that we're able to upload avatars, switch in and out of stuff, and try user-generated worlds and code in something that is not nodes, and we're all these things I think are really, really good. And I also know how much work and effort has gone into those systems, and I can appreciate that.
Okay. And on the flip side, what is one thing that you believe VRChat can improve upon?
Lack of communication is their biggest issue, and has always been their biggest issue. They fail to communicate with their community. They are trying, and they try really hard, and I'm very thankful to everyone at VRChat that has reached out to me personally, has tried to communicate with the community, has done things with the community, has succeeded in those aspects. But yeah, they need to do better at that.
Okay. So as someone who is involved in building for social VR yourself, what do you have any suggestions for, like, how they could potentially do that? Obviously you're not in the thick of it over there, but how would you go about that? Like, how would you communicate, or how do you communicate with people involved in social VR, and like, as someone where people could count on you, let's say, how do you communicate? Yeah. How would you?
We're a different size. I talk to 1,000 people. They talk to hundreds of thousands of people. So when I'm asked what would I do, well, what I do for my small community will not work at that scale. And that's why they have the team members that they've got now associated with those placements. But things that I do, that I try to do, is reply to people, to communicate with people, to reach out to people, to promote and be available for those people that have issues with Basis. I dedicate a large chunk of time to answering, no offense, dumb questions.
Yeah.
And I think VRChat's way they take feedback and the way they communicate could be improved further, and I don't have an exact like bullet or solution to that. But their problem also stems from them being a for-profit, right? When you're a for-profit, there is information that must not be shared in the same way as what I can share. Like, I can tell you my financial status, I can tell you a lot of like the business backing of Basis, but let's say if you want to run a project in VRChat, that communication would have to go through the business team, and all of a sudden you're talking lots of money. It's a different level, and when you take money from the community, but also from the investors, you have certain stipulations that make it harder to work with you.
Yeah. I know that there are a lot of people who have voiced a number of concerns regarding VRChat's communication, especially recently. It hasn't really been as and we've had this issue in the past. Like, I've been on VRChat for 3 years at this point, so I've been keeping an eye on things. I do like watch what goes on social media, but it's never really been as significant as it is right now with how they kind of handle things. So, or how this the seemingly lack of communication. Like, they're communicating, they are, but it doesn't seem as though they are quite like hitting the mark with regards to like releases and just like how they're responding to feedback, we'll say. What has been your thoughts on this most recent kind of flow of just developers being very kind of fed up with everything, or not everything, but with how they've handled communication?
VRChat, up until now, and up until the creator economy was, not the creator economy, the avatar marketplace, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I guess kind of both,
it being,
in a way.
Yeah, really. Let's just talk about the entire monetization of VRChat.
Yeah.
I guess we're getting into that pretty early.
Well, I mean, this is VRChat, not what you're doing. So we'll get into what you're doing later. But this is still VRChat.
But this is also one of them. Like there is deep philosophy as to why I'm doing things in the way that I am, and why I'm worried about the industry, right? And one of those reasons is corporations that have, or corporations, businesses that have taken money from VC, back stuff, and then those VCs are expecting 10, 20x, 100x the return on their investment. So when we look at VRChat and we apply that logic from their VCs, a lot of the problems that we have make sense all of a sudden. Why the avatar marketplace is the way it is, why the creator economy is the way it is, why are they not allowing us to download the files, why are we, all these. I could go into it for hours, and we probably will, but I've lost my train of thought in saying that.
Creator economy, avatar marketplace. What are your thoughts about VRChat? Like their most recent communication. What the community, a lot of developers feel that they're not communicating, they're not being communicated with well.
Yeah. And let's be real, they lost a bunch of their developers as well, right? So their teams, all their teams got restructured, and the capacity of people lowered. Then they have user service agreements with companies. So that means they can't communicate about certain aspects of VRChat with the wider audience, because it might, how do I say this? It might cause issues. with my headset is fogging up. Great. But so that they have as you can probably tell, I'm trying my hardest not to say anything nasty or
Of course, yeah.
angry and that's because I respect VRChat and they respect me, and the reasons why they're doing things all make sense. There's not some like illogical, narcissistic like backing of any of the things they do. They really do care, but they have the problem where they have to make a lot of money, or problems will occur and more people will get fired. People's jobs are on the line, and when it comes down to that, they're going to pick, increasing monetization across the board, putting developers not so much on developing new tools and functionalities for world creators or avatar creators, but instead monetizing their community, spending the time to make sure that they can stay alive. And to do that, they need to bring in a lot of money. They've taken over 100 million in VC, right? Or and I might be wrong on that, and please, people correct me. But in doing that, they have put themselves in a situation 10 years later that requires that level of monetization.
So with regards to like monetization efforts that they're making, like I truly do, like I will always say that I love VRChat. Like VRChat has changed my life. It has changed many people's lives here. So like I think we would be remiss to like obviously like we're just kind of we're doing very like constructive criticism, and we're talking about VRChat as people who do care about the platform and who have been very, very much, who benefit from the platform's existence. So like just in terms of like how we approach things, I totally understand that. And obviously I'm not out here trying to make VRChat look like the big bad boogeyman. That's not my goal. But I'm here to kind of get like thoughts from people, like people who are actually like who are paying attention to these sorts of things. I think it's good to get perspective on that. So, like, when it comes to their monetization efforts, when it comes to even the avatar marketplace and the, God, why am I forgetting things now? Avatar marketplace and the, oh my gosh, I guess various things that they're doing. They're making a lot of, like, they have drones, various things that are making VRC Plus more valuable. They're trying to make VRC Plus more valuable.
Yep.
They're creating the avatar marketplace. They're trying different things. The creator economy as a whole, they're trying to really build that up. Do you think that the way that they're going about it is good? I think they're trying to make VRC Plus more valuable, which is something I think a lot of people were complaining about for a good bit of time back when I first started. Yep. So I think that's a good thing that they've done that and they've added things on. But with regards to like their most recent developments, is like the avatar marketplace is. Do you think that's what the people wanted? Or do you think maybe the implementation isn't as good as it could have been? But do you think that's what people wanted? We'll start with that.
So, I hear a lot from Jinxie, who you've had on recently, about the differences between VRChat's marketplace and what they do. So, whenever I frame it in my head, I'm always seeing his point of view, and I'm seeing VRChat's, even if they don't communicate it directly with me, right? And I look at the two and I understand why things are done on both sides. But what the community wants, the loudest voices in the community are creators, right? So we get to hear their opinions, but we also get to hear the power users. But the general consumer does not care about file downloads. They would be confused by that.
Exactly.
And that is not how it is elsewhere, right? So what VRChat's done is built, again, they always seem to do this, they build tools for the public, the wider audience. And they do that with everything. And that is also the main reason why developers are upset, it's why avatar creators are upset, is because they are power users and they have hit the limit of what VRChat wants people to do.
So, do you think they should be developing for those of us who are who've been on the platform, the creators, the developers? I feel like when I have seen that done by other companies, for example, Blizzard, they are building WoW for their core, for the people who are playing the game. They're not trying to bring in a new audience. They're just building on what they've already done. For example, so with regards to VRChat, go ahead.
It all returns money. VRChat has taken the VC funding, therefore they must continue to grow their business. They must continue to get new users because they've taken $100 million in investment. It all stems from that one problem. Money is really great, but it can also put an ankle monitor on your leg. Anyway, but VRChat is doing the best they can to monetize in a way that is not stepping on people's toes. But in doing that, they are not targeting the demographic that we are. We are legacy. We will be gone. That is the truth. VRChat is becoming closer to what they pitched to their VCs. And that's let's be real. Uploading avatars is not only a rare feature. VRChat have issues all the time because of it. We are the issue. As developers and as avatar creators, we cause more issues for VRChat than what we even know about, right? And the content that 1% of people are creating on here, if it's pornographic, if it's overly sexualized, if it's violence, those are all things that are also hurting VRChat's ability to monetize long term as well. Yeah, I don't know if that fully answered your question, but I hope at the very least that it was able to bridge that gap in your mind as well, and the people that are watching's mind.
Yeah. So in their efforts to bring in new users and to grow the user base, they are largely sacrificing the legacy users who are
the small population.
The small population. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then the ones that will be the developers and avatar creators that will be able to stick around are the ones that will end up having their income solely based from VRChat or VRChat related stuff. And if you're not on that pipeline, then shut up and be happy. Because the honest truth is, it's a lot of money to upload, to provide a service where you can upload an avatar for free. It doesn't just cost dollars; it costs hundreds of dollars over time. It's for your avatar, and when you share it with 1,000 people, it's just, VRChat have done very well because they were able to get a lot of their money from the boom during COVID or at the end of it, and because of that, we're in the situation today where it's lasted as long as it has, but we're seeing that transition. We're seeing them lock it down slowly and slowly. We're seeing them neglect things, not because they want to neglect it, but because if they don't work on monetization, VRChat will not exist. At least in the way we know it.
So what do you think what do you think about the direction that VRChat is going, given everything that we've discussed and everything that you've shared? What do you think that VRChat is headed, and in your opinion, based on everything that we know currently?
It's a Roblox competitor who has a 30% cut to an additional platform, and their tech, the ability to be how we are, is incredible. It's a reason a lot of people use VRChat, right? And sadly, I think your question was the direction, yeah?
Yeah.
Was that correct?
Yeah, direction. Mm-hmm.
So, the direction. Where do I think it's going? Roblox. But how are they going to differentiate themselves from Roblox? Well, that's a hard one because they seem to be becoming more and more like it every day, and I'm like, I'm worried. I am worried that VR chat is becoming more and more normie. One of the reasons, for example, back in the day, like HTC gave money to VRChat, but I bet one of the not stipulations, but one of the main reasons for that is I'm sure of it at this point, is that like the Vive trackers, one of the only apps that used it was VRChat, and today, it's not really changed too much. It's like we haven't really had, how am I gonna put that? I would say full body tracking is actually on the decline. Overall, of the user base, as it's grown, the advanced users are staying relatively the same size, while the normies keep growing, and these advanced features are not actually necessary for 99% of the population, and it's only because the developers at VRChat both give a shit and I still work there and and care about the stuff. But once those developers quit, leave, or get replaced, I'm really worried that the features we're going to be seeing in here are not anywhere focused on us.
So do you think that VRChat should focus on the power users or the normies? You said they're going like the Roblox direction. So, if they develop for the power users, they're more likely to keep developers on the platform, but they're not going to be able to monetize in the way that's going to get, the people who are coming in to monetize accordingly. So they have to market a lot of their tools and new features to the normies so that they'll be willing to spend that, that massive amount of $10 on VRC Plus. So they can invest into the platform. So they have to do that. But do you think that going in that direction is good? Like, which direction do you think would be more beneficial based on, what's happened in the past, how they've lost developers, how, Udon basically had to be halted in its development. It's still kind of coming along, but it was slowed largely due to losing particular devs. So, So basically, what do you think? What do you think about that?
I'm going to steal something from Tupper and Straz. They said not too long ago, and I agree with them on an old saying. All tides. Is it raise all ships? Yeah, rising tides raise ships. Basically, VRChat's normie growth is a really good thing for the rest of the industry. It like, let's be real. People aren't using VR as much as they used to during COVID, right? So there's this decline, and then because of that, we had job loss, and now it's like, what happens from here? Well, here, should I say. What happens from here? Does it go up? Does it go down? VRChat failing is not what any of us want, right?
Right.
So, and them growing is beneficial to the wider audience of VR. So I should always say, I want them, selfishly, to go the normie route. And I'm a developer. I would love the new features, right? But the truth is, having an audience is really important. And even though VRChat will become more and more normie, it is still an amazing place to both learn development, because it will still exist. I'm not saying it will go away, just that it won't become the major focus. And we're seeing that people will get grumpy. But that's also why I built Basis, is so that I will get into that, right? So I'll keep it quick. But like, that's why I built Basis as well, is to bring back some of that creativity. Let VRChat fill the void that they're filling. Let me fill the other void for the devs, and people will cross-pollinate. People will come here to build stuff that normies use, and people will build stuff that's dev focused over there, and I think that works great. most people's hate towards VRChat is just from that question. I would even suggest, like, they don't know it. They don't even know that that's part of the conversation, right? But I think that's the big one.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of devs are just like really fed up with a lot of what they're doing, but I think everyone, like the devs are not the VRChat devs, but I mean the developers who've developed things for VRChat know that the importance of like VRChat making money and all that. So there's kind of like this tug of war. Like the devs want to develop for VRChat, but VRChat doesn't want to let those features exist, so they keep phasing them out. And then the devs are mad that they're phasing them out, but VRChat's trying to build a platform for the normies, but then the devs are like, well, my shit doesn't work on anymore, so why should I do that? And then the world developers and even avatar creators are like, oh, well, now I can't do what I plan to do, like Lakuza had this massive world planned, and because of Cyan Trigger being like discontinued essentially due to VRChat's choice and make choices they made, basically they can't do that anymore, or it's going to take much longer rather. So like,
could I weigh in on that situation?
Sure, absolutely.
Between Lakuza and Cyan Laser and VRChat?
For sure.
I thought that situation was so dumb. So Cyan Laser, has licensed their stuff, so that way the other people can't just fix it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We all have to make money. I suspect the reason that it went the way it did is VRChat, or Cyan Laser was trying to get VRChat to purchase that IP for it and then roll it. But I also could be wrong there. But that's what makes sense to me and why that situation occurred. And Cyan Laser's been through a lot. Maybe he's burnt out from the past. The past problems, the past community, and I can't speak for them, right? I can only see what I've seen, and I may be wrong. So Cyan Laser, when you see this, my apologies if I got anything wrong, but and feel free to correct me. But how it went down and what VRChat changed, VRChat can change things, and they should, right? They shouldn't be afraid to change things. But if the community's backlashing like that because of their change, they need to actively say, hey, we're gonna pause for a bit, we're gonna talk with the community. But what VRChat tends to do, and you've seen it like I have, they tend to just punch it until it's that way anyway. They want it their way. You don't get a say, and that's the problem. That's the communication fault. Is them just not like, oh, we made a mistake, guys. We're sorry. They don't want to say that because they have obligations never to say that now. They have financial reasons to never say sorry anymore. I suspect half the reason that we always see, and this is something we all joke about, and none of us have got complete evidence that it's like this, right? But one of the things that I'm always like is whenever they say like a third party caused this problem. Yeah, but you paid the third party to host that, and if it goes down, you're the one paying for that service. You're the one that picked that service. There is no fallback plan. The thing's exploded. That's on you. Your user service agreement, if I had to suspect, has a clause in it that basically, and this is like a me theory. This stays here, guys. My theory is like their user service agreement has like a stipulation in it that if it's a third party service that went down, it's not their problem. And I bet that's the reason it's like that. And I could be wrong, but here's the thing: no one's. Why aren't they? If it's not the case, I can't think of any other reason they wouldn't just say it. Like, hey, this service is down. We're sorry. maybe it's security, maybe it's other reasons. But I think that's the other issue with VRChat. You never know which one it is because they don't communicate at all, right? We don't know. And what we're left with is, what is it? And if I can't get an answer, if I can't get an answer as a developer, I get mad. All of a sudden, people start making up shit because they can. And because there's no other evidence to suggest anything, they allow the rumors to just explode because of that. And it's the cycle just keeps repeating. And here we are. There you go. You gotta rant from me.
Okay. Hell yeah. Like I mean, I think it's really good to like hear from a developer who's really respected in the community, like what you think about that. Like I'm glad that we could get your thoughts on that. And I have an additional question on top of that. Do you think that EAC was the start of everything? That's kind of an issue with VRChat.
EAC was when not even half the developer community. That was their first instance of pissing off their not developers. It was actually the first instance of them pissing off people that were in the know about the internals, the external of VRChat, to a point where it wasn't just like, I'm gonna start up the game and jump in the game. Like they're like, oh, I'm gonna mod it. I'm gonna add these things to make my life better. I'm gonna add these things to piss off the other people. Like there was the good and the bad, right? And the moment they did that, it shut down the creativity engine that is the community. VRChat is only as good as it is today because people like me, people like you, people like the other developers put the time in, the effort in to help them build their business, to support them, to literally hold their hand in some cases on the ways to do stuff. And they are putting us to the side now because they need to financially. We got so many years of free shit, and we have to understand that was our payment for doing that. Our payment in this scenario is that they took the money and for a very long time let us do whatever we want. But now they have to crack down. Now they have to monetize. If they don't, they will continue to shut down. They will lose they will lose more developers. They will lose everything. And I don't want that. I want to see this succeed, right? And we all should be, but we must understand that the experience that VRChat will not be the one we remember. It's every year we're like, wow, remember the good old days?
Yeah. I mean, people were saying like the good old days were like the fucking kid Knuckles, Uganda Knuckles. That was like the good old days for a lot of people. Like back when we didn't have various like user levels and such, and there were just publics all over the place.
Yeah.
And those were the good old days for a lot of people. And so what you're suggesting is that this will be the good old days for like.
If you cut out the money incentives, VRChat is incredible. But when you add the money incentives, the people that get hurt is not it's a small portion of people that care a lot about VRChat, that are followed by a lot of people because of the content they create. And when they stop creating that content, the other junior devs will take that position, and by that I mean like Lakuza's gone, right? That's a big blow. He's an amazing developer, amazing artist. I really respect the dude. Had plenty of chats with him over the years. Respect him a lot. But who's going to fill his place? When he goes, it's someone who's now got that's probably going to start learning. Their worlds are going to be unoptimized. They're going to be having their, oh mate, I've got 20 FPS in your world. That kind of, situation every time, because it's a learning experience. And that knowledge has just been ripped out of the community. Cyan Laser has been ripped out of the community. You rip all these people out. What you are left with is a community of people that don't actually create anymore, and instead they're consumers of pre-existing content. And I would also suggest that because of the way VRChat has gone, the reason game worlds don't exist anymore or when you look at them, they just jar, or the other people that have monetized, is because of that problem as well, where they get locked into games just don't do well in here because they're not promoted, they're not pushed. VRChat's networking sucks balls. We all know it. We've done it for years. Even VRChat devs know it. They've spent countless hours fixing stuff. I could shout out the developers at VRChat that have made our lives better. But they know who they are as well, right? And I really do care, as you can probably tell, about this, and I'm very thankful. And I'm very thankful to VRChat. Now, you won't know this, but I'll let you know. Like, I was very lucky to get contract work from VRChat for a few weeks because of the people I know there, and they're lovely people. They're lovely people at VRChat. VRChat's hiring is, they're lovely. Management, they've acknowledged, sucks. But there are lovely managers as well, right? Every company has their issues, and I try not to bag out VRChat because without them, I wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be here, a lot of us wouldn't be here, and we would all be suffering from, we'd be somewhere else, probably somewhere far shittier, and wanting to see VRChat improve, and Tupper and Straz will know this, it's not a bad thing. We all want to see each other succeed. We all want to see each other fix problems. We all want this industry to grow. And I do not like bagging them out. But they do have things that we have to acknowledge. There are truths that they won't want to acknowledge that need to be acknowledged. And understanding that they're not perfect and I'm not perfect. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that insight. Like it's really great hearing it from like a developer. That's really awesome to hear. Like what your thoughts on things.
You're getting it out of me today. Well done.
Thank you. I love what I do. I enjoy this. I like to understand and just understand people better. So, I love that my questions are awakening things in you, because I pay attention. I keep an eye on things. I think a lot of people...
Don't say it like that.
Okay. All right. But yeah, but like people think that I don't really like look over things or that I'm not like paying attention to things. I'm just like doing this podcast because I think it's a fun thing to do. And I do think it's fun, but I actually do care about VRChat and I pay attention to what goes on in the community. I'm keeping an eye on these things, and I know even more people these days that are also keeping a close eye on things. So I think it's important to know exactly what I'm talking about and to ask questions that I think will be pertinent to people understanding a little bit more about what's going on, not just with VRChat, but with like people who are making things in the community as well. So yeah.
And I want people to know, like, what I talk about here with you is born out of love for VR and VRChat.
Of course.
Not born out of hatred. And that's something that I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw some people under the bus. Chill Out VR over the years has not been very nice or kind. And their developers, I'm sure, are fine, but their community is hostile to VRChat because of EAC, right? And how that went down, you essentially have a community that will eat itself alive out of hatred. It's only out of love that we can get things changed. And that's a message that I think needs to be said, is like, we can only change things or improve things with love and respect, not hatred and fire.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's about understanding the differences, what makes each other different, and what each other can contribute to the conversation that will ultimately raise everyone up in the end. So yeah.
Agreed.
Yes. So speaking of that, let's talk about your Unity development and like what goes into that. Like, how does that kind of tie into what you do? Because Unity has been a big part of your life. Is it from like the very beginning, like from like 10 years ago, or
16 years of age? That's when I got my first job in Unity, until now, and I am still working Unity on a daily basis. And yeah, Unity's got its own issues, right? And I could get into those, but and I'm passionate about those problems as well. You know, we are in a dire situation right now in general in VR, but when it comes to, do you want to go in, do you want my background in Unity?
Absolutely, yeah.
Through that?
For sure, yeah.
All right,
absolutely.
let's put the drama in a box and we'll come back to it.
Yeah. Fine by me.
So I started in Unity, and there's things I'm not proud of in my career, right? There's times when I've messed up, and there's times when I've had problems, but those are all learning experiences, and I will talk about them as well. But when I got into VR, it was, I think, 3.5 or 2.5. I can never remember which one it was, but it is old Unity. And I ran that Unity version on a really old hardware. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. I slowly learned how to program. I would stay up quite late learning how to program. I would do a lot of things in my life that I probably shouldn't have. Like, here's another crazy fact about me. I'll go just before my Unity stuff. I couldn't read or write till I was in like year 6 or 7 at school. So essentially just before high school, or you know, like when you're meant to start focusing on like what you want to do. I couldn't read or write. So once I picked up that skill, my it exploded and I became a bookworm. But my writing skills are terrible, and that's something that's really affected my career over the years. But I essentially went from not being able to read and write to being able to read and write. Oh, and let's learn programming, like here. So I've almost known how to program as long as I've known how to read and write, and that is a crazy thought. So when I program, it is a second language to me. It is a lot of how I perceive or write things are also like program based. But let's get into my history. So I started out by making assets on the asset store, and that's, you know, Unity's asset store for people that don't know what that is. And I was a publisher on there for many years. I still am till this day, but I take a much more laid-back approach. The first thing I built was an entering and exiting system for vehicles. So like, you know, GTA style, jump in and out of the vehicle, but way shittier. And over the years, as I became a better programmer, I'd like update that code. But from that is where I got my first job. I built that tool, and then another development studio was like, hey, we would like to use that. And they were like, we want it modified for these things. And I came over and did that, and I was terrible. Shouldn't have got me to do it. I now know that. Back then, I had no idea what I was getting myself involved with, and I failed. Right? But I got $100 out of it. I'm happy. That's where I started. After that, I increased my understanding of Unity by a lot. I also had some trials and tribulations in life, as well as in dealing with me being a failure in the coding. And I eventually went and worked on Last Epoch. After that, I was asked to join the Last Epoch team.
Really?
Yeah.
I know that game.
And I was it's big now, massive. Yeah, and I'll talk about some of the other ones I've worked on as well, right? But I went there, and the reason I was there is they needed someone who could help optimize their game, and I came in, and with my limited knowledge and understanding, and also being a naive kid, got straight into it, and we made a lot of good steps. I learned a lot of life lessons and got pulled up all the time for being inappropriate, being problematic, you know, all the things that a young person needs to fix in their, you know, growing up age. And very thankful to Judd Kobler, who is the lead there. Well, not lead, is the owner. Through that time and experience that I spent working with the graphics of that game, founded a lot of my ability to listen, I would actually suggest. Like, they really did care and give me the time I needed to grow. And towards the end of that, I started to get pulled up and get warned that this might be one of the last times before I get booted. I was just young, and because of that experience, I learnt so much. I was a junior then, I'm a senior now. Things are very different, and I see this pattern, those problems in juniors, and I get the pull them up now, and it's not like a I have power over you. It's a, wow, I can see that now. I can see these problems because people put the time and effort into me to be able to see those problems. So last epoch, I ended up having a problem on their project, so I reached out to Adam Goodrich. I hope I'm saying everyone's name correctly. Adam Goodrich is a Unity dev who makes things like Gaia, or
Gaia Online.
No.
Okay.
Okay. I get it all the time.
Yeah.
I get it all the time. Ooh, Gaia.
Gaia
Gaia
Online?
map in VRChat. The VRChat map.
So which Gaia?
So Gaia, as in the terrain tools.
Okay.
They're normally the top asset on the asset store.
Okay.
And behind that is a team of people that build toolings. They build things like, I'll get into what I did there in a second. I won't say that one, but other things. Anyway, I ended up talking to him, and I must have made an impression because he accepted me. He's like, "Oh, you want a job?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll come do that." And he expected me to be a senior dev. I must have gave some impression that I was a senior dev or a good developer. Between me and you in the community, I was pretty shit. But I was less shit. Every year I became less of a heaping pile of poo. While I went and did that, I got to learn a lot of good life lessons. I also got PTSD from the Teams audio. The little blink, blink. It's taken until now, literally this year, to not get PTSD from that. And now I can have Teams messages about any problems. But I learnt so much from Judd Kobler, Adam Goodrich. These two were foundational in converting me into the person I was when I joined VRChat. Someone who would listen and respect. All these things that you require in this industry, I picked up from that. My coding skills also improved a great deal from being told, "Why are you doing it that way? That's not how we do it." All these really good things. Judd, it was definitely, "Hey, you need to do XYZ things to not upset people, and hey, you can't do that." And with Adam, it was, "Have you considered these programming techniques?" And those two together turned me from a junior by the time I left there to maybe being less of a junior. So now I leave this, here I am, right? I've done a few months with Adam Goodrich. I end up quitting because I've got PTSD and problems from trying to keep up with the other developers that are literally in their 40s. I'm trying to keep up with devs that are in their 40s and 50s. I think I was at the time was like 18, like trying to keep up with them. And I ended up working on a product there called Storm, which is essentially a massive. It's a really cool system, but the idea is to render a massive amount of things at once. How do we optimize for large scale? And this is before Unreal 5. This is before Unity's ECS. This is how do we do it with the tools that we have in Unity. It'd be 2018, 2019. So it'd be Unity 5, Unity 2018 or 2019. So like old stuff, right? And through that is when I started to understand a lot more. And as I quit that, I bought a VR headset, like a little bit just before I quit, and that's when I got into VRChat. So from there, I didn't actually pick up commercial work for a while, until I started doing commissions in VRChat. So I'd bang out every week or two a commission. So that's, and you know, there's like 50 commissions I've done in VRChat, and each one was all about improving my skills. I now know that I had to improve my programming. I knew I had to improve the way I communicate. And the communication skill is much bigger than the programming skill. That's the one I struggle with, even to this day. And I know I need to spend more time on it. And that's also because I'm slightly impaired, right? From when growing up not being able to read or write for so long, I missed out on a few opportunities. And just as well, going back to the start, when I was at school, I ended up dropping a subject to pursue programming. And that was really good. But the teacher that allowed me to do that didn't know that's what I was doing. But little did they know, it paid off in the long term. Also, I figured out why my lenses are fogging up. It's because the plastic bit's actually sliding off of it. And okay. So I've got a replacement gasket in the other room. I'll go get it later when we take our break. Right. But until then, we'll be moving this up and down.
No worries.
I think the fact that I've got so hot now with like talking and getting going, it's like re-laminating itself.
I see. Okay.
So after I did that, after doing commissions in VRChat, I actually helped a mate run a gaming center where I live, and that taught me more. I got to learn a bit about management. I got to learn a bit about resolution conflicts. I got to help build something with my own hands from scratch, and that was really nice. And then I was also working on Settings Manager at the time, which is what made me a bit of money. I was working on tools for VRChat. I did VRCon. I don't know if you know what VRCon is. I can tell the community.
Yeah, I've never heard of VRCon. I've never heard of it.
So when Virality was starting up, right, there was another one, and that was VRCon. And VRCon was for the community. It was a project by Fizzy, the streamer, and I jumped on board then to come help them with world dev. And I ended up taking over their world department. And I built a bunch of the worlds and helped them grow. And do you know Project Community now?
I know Project Community. I've heard of them. Yeah.
Project Community is founded by a lot of the same people that did VRCon.
I see. Okay.
So the world team there are influenced / I taught a few of them, and I'm very thankful to see that projects like that are ongoing. And after doing VRCon, I did the game jam that VRChat does did, that had a monetary value every Halloween. And I submitted a world that was my first game world in VRChat, which is a Shattered World, which is like a zombie shooter, right? And I was also around the same time working on VRCon, and I was also working on Happy's world that is actually for people to come work in the real world, but in virtual reality and communicate digitally. And through that, I was able to spend time with more VRChat developers as a business relationship was growing, interestingly around places in ways that were unexpected. And from that, I was then asked if I'd like to take a commission from VRChat to, it wasn't even a contract, it was just a commission, I believe, actually, to optimize the New Year's world. Yeah,
Which one?
If the community remembers,
Which
the
one?
2022 one, I have a plaque in it that says Dooley, optimized by Dooley.
Oh,
And
okay.
my fiance helped a lot on that as well, to help make it optimized, and essentially because of what I was able to do, I was able to save people a lot of frames, and I'm quite happy with the work that went on there. As with everything, there's always drama, but I think generally it all went well. And that was the same year that that Yakuza, as well as Fiona, Legends, and Cyan Laser released. What's that world called? The big one. Oh, that was great.
The bullet time thing.
No. There's even a bigger one than that.
Really?
Yeah, give me a second.
Yeah.
I probably have it in my list. But that world that they created basically broke what people's expectations of worlds are in VRChat, as well as setting a new standard. And at the time, I was doing things that were pretty throwaway, right? But because of that, that's when I went, hey, I need to step up my game. This is an experience unlike anything else, and we can do this. The Devouring.
The
was the
Devouring.
name of the map mode.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should try it. You'd love it.
Okay.
It is a 4-player co-op game in here that takes you through a story in a horror environment. By far the best production. And again, the fact that you don't know about it points again to what I was talking about, where games are neglected in here. The Devouring is by far one of the best experiences I've ever had in VR. In VR, like in general. And I've done a lot, and I'm also a developer. It was the first game that made me feel like I wasn't actually in VR chat. And that's kind of like a blown moment, right? And set a new standard for us world creators to try and hit, and none of us have come close because of that churning cycle that we mentioned earlier. But after a few years of that, I was like, from the VRCon stuff, I actually got picked out by a developer slash owner of a business that was like, hey, do you want to come build a VR platform for us? And I said, sure, why not? That sounds like a great idea. I was really not ready for how complex this stuff is. So I did a year there. I built something that was pretty cool. We could hold like 100 people, on it. I was like, that's pretty sick. And it was meant for deployment in businesses that wanted to run events, or wanted to have a place, where they could communicate digitally, but with avatars and a place to sit and come have a board meeting, those kind of things. And that was really good. I ended up leaving them, however, because I was worried about the direction of where they would take that. I was worried that they would not promote, and I gotta be careful here because I'm actually a contractor still for these people, and there's a reason for that, which is I've changed my opinion of them. But because of the way they were going to take the company, I decided I don't want a part in that. I left, and I went and worked on another project, which it was a bit more community focused and another platform. Sadly, I can't talk about that one as they are still a thing and are working on. But what I can tell is after that, I was pretty broke because I was taking equity in the company and also being a part owner in it, and I needed money. So then I went and worked on Blacktop Hoops, which is a game on the Quest store and also on the Steam store under VR. And I did a while there, saved up enough money to during all this time I've been dating my fiance, right? And only at that stage that I have the capital required to go visit her. So when I went for the work trip out to America, out to LA to meet the rest of the team for Blacktop Hoops, On the way back, I went and stayed with my fiance, and got to know her family and proposed. That was lovely.
Oh, wow,
But
wow.
I'll continue on.
Yeah.
And that leads to today. After quitting that job, after getting laid off from that job when all the industry people got laid off because the COVID ended. Then a while after that, the money ran out. Right, so it's a boom. Game didn't do amazing, so it ended up being I'm looking for another job. And I went, I'm going to look for another job, but I'm also going to start working on a special project. One where it's community driven, community focused, where the problems that I had seen at the previous two companies building social platforms and building platforms in general, how do we solve those? And I went, well, what if it's not a platform? What if we build a framework that allows developers to build whatever they want? What if they don't have to worry about money? What if they don't have to worry about the creative lockinesses, where it's like we're locking down the creativity and we're locking down people's ability to use their minds to their full capacity to build things? What if we just stop that? What if we just build and give people the tooling required to build something crazy? And I did that. And I talked to a bunch of people at Virality and was like, this is what I want to do, / this is where I'm at. And all of a sudden, next minute, I'm here a year later, where it's like, wow, Basis is kind of getting big and people are liking it. And, well, look at that. That's pretty cool. And, yeah, that brings me here to today.
All right, man. That's quite the journey. That's like the entirety of your Unity asset creation
10 years.
programming journey. That's pretty impressive. Like you've done a lot. So obviously, you covered a lot of things. So I'm gonna try to ask questions related to what you've said. So can you talk in more detail about the commissions that you had for VRChat? And well, we'll start there first.
Yeah, so it was just the one. It was the New Year's World.
Oh, okay.
And that's all I've done. And beyond that, I've done personal commissions for some of the VRChat team for Worlds as well. Yeah, that's what I can say about that.
Okay. Gotcha.
I'm very thankful to that opportunity, and even my ability to say that is kind of cool, and they unintentionally, without knowing it, also help promote me in a way where I can even say that and it turns heads, because they put their trust in me, and by doing that, the wider community is now putting partially their trust in me as well, because of that. I know where I'm from. I know who built me, and it's all these people.
Of course. It's always good to remember the people who've gotten you to where you are today. It's always important to remember that. So, the New Year's World that you worked on, that was around the time when I first started VRChat. So I was still not quite. I was still not quite there. Like you said, the 2022 New Year's World. So 2022 is when I started VRChat. So I still wasn't like. I wasn't. High five. Hey. I wasn't quite in there. Wasn't quite integrated yet. I started the podcast, but I wasn't really in it like I am now. Yeah, I totally missed that, unfortunately. But that's cool. So, your work on Last Epoch is also really interesting. You were just doing graphical work in that regard, or? So,
I optimized their game. When I came in, they had no idea about how to render lighting, because most of them were new to Unity as well, right? I'm fixing my gasket. Again.
No worries.
Oh, it's getting annoying. Sorry. If I knew it was going to be this year, I wouldn't have used the other one.
That's fair.
Yeah. This is so my fiance brought over the gasket from Europe. She's like, oh yeah, I have my own one. I was like, oh good, I'll put on hers, because hers will be good. No, it's slipping and sliding. But with Last Epoch, they had no optimizations in place. So when I came on, you'd try the demo and you'd get 4 FPS.
Wow.
And then it wasn't because of like a bad actor. It was because of lack of knowledge, lack of reading documentation, lack of time to learn, lack of time to implement. Um, Even the developers at 11-hour games will say they were rushed. Time is and was of the highest degree of worry. Everything they had to do quickly, and they rushed things. And these days, they've spent years paying for that mistake and fixing it to the point where we all know and love it today. And uh, when I came on, and what I did was setting up like their graphic systems, their settings panels, fixing and correcting bullshit that had been done, like rendering two directional lights pointed at the opposite sides of each other in forward. So you're essentially rendering it all again, twice, because they were told / read somewhere online that it's a good practice to light your scene with two directional lights like that, pointing at each other. Turns out, not a great idea. And so I fixed up a lot of those issues. I standardized a bunch of things, but I was a junior, and I don't like taking credit because there isn't really anything that I've done these days that's still in last epoch. But what I did do was put them on the path to where they are today with that department. And I was paid $1,000 a month to do that. So my wage reflected my skill set while I was there. And I was happy about that. And I'm happy about it today. I probably wasn't happy about it back then, but I know where I am now. I can look back, and looking back is always easy once you've gone through it, right? At the time, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. I mean, like the work that you've done on, I haven't played Last Epoch, but I have seen footage of it. I've seen some gameplay of it. I believe it's Diablo-esque, right? Like something to that effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Heavily inspired by Diablo.
Yeah.
Like the Judd Cobbler, if you ever get to hear his life experience about how he got into Diablo, there's a reason they care so much. And they are one of the studios I've actually worked at that they gave a shit about everything. And that is why they still exist to this day, is because they're passionate. In the same way me and you are passionate about social VR. They were and are very passionate about making a Diablo game that the community gets to be along for the ride and a part of a really good user experience. And that's that.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm kind of curious because I want to go back to kind of what you were saying earlier when you first were sharing about how you got into Unity and how it became essentially your second language in the midst of learning how to read and write. So, like, to someone like yourself who was engaged in programming at such it sounds like a very young age, like what is that like? What is that like? Like how do you understand that about yourself now in terms of having programming be essentially a way that you communicate? Now, when you say programming, I'm assuming you mean in Unity, like just Unity, like specifically.
I can program outside of Unity as well.
Okay.
I wouldn't be a senior if I couldn't do that.
Right.
Like I have done stuff outside of Unity, but Unity is, if you want to talk to me about crazy stuff, it's going to be talking about inside of Unity. But when I was growing up, I think one of the biggest things that people looked at my English skills, and I eventually got given a computer, right? I got approved to essentially have a computer, and I kid you not, my test scores doubled because the teachers could read my writing.
Wow. Okay.
And that was a big thing, is because of programming and because of gaming, it literally doubled my capacity in terms of like score. And That's because the teachers could read my couldn't read my handwriting, could read the computer. So ever since then, my English has got worse actually in spelling, like with a pen, and it's got better on the computer. And I'm still learning. I'm still learning lots. But one of the things that that was good. I had a computer, right, for basically everything. Never got bullied about it. That was good as well. Never had any problems. I went to a Christian school. I am a Christian, and it was easy as. I'm very thankful to having such a good childhood. And the teachers gave a shit.
Yeah.
All I gave a shit. But one of the other things was it was never really acknowledged at my school because it was rural that I was a programmer. People would get awards, special things, and I'm not feeling burnt about this or anything. It's more just like the values of the school were not aligned with who I was becoming. And if I was in a specialized school for programming, I could have been accelerated further. And that's a crazy thought. That is crazy to think about that. I knew what I wanted to do at such a young age. And my fiance goes like, I don't have that. I still struggle to this day to know what to do. And she does a great job of her job, you know, and she's a very good artist. But I wish I had plenty of mentors when I was growing up, and I was very lucky for that. But I wish when I got to high school, the person in charge of that, like IT, was younger instead of being very old. I'll put it that way. That's a nice way of putting it. And I was very lucky to also have my parents support me in programming. Because of that, I've done a lot. And my old man, us parents, parents always worry, right? I'm sure yours worry, mine worry, and they don't these days, right? If we're doing well. But my parents worried that like I wasn't gonna get a job being a programmer, and my dad has, me and him have a funny thing that happened where he came home one day and I said, "Hey Dad, I made $30 today." And he goes, "That's great. I make that in like a quarter of an hour or something." That's what he said. And I said, "But Dad, it's every month I get given that money. It's recurring forever until they stop." And it took a while for my dad to realize what I was doing in that and who I was becoming. But once he clicked it, my family just supported me. And I'm a Christian, and I want to be as good of as a man as I can be. And my dad is definitely my role model in that. And I'm very thankful to my mum and dad for the time and effort that they put into me, because his father didn't. And I'm gonna get me tearing up here, but I'm a very lucky man to, especially on here, getting to hear people's stories and backgrounds, and a lot of people on here are broken, right? I always say, if you're on VRChat, there's a problem with you. Doesn't matter what it is, you've just got a problem. And sadly for a lot of people, that problem is their relationship with their parents, and that could be because of their sexuality, because of abuse. I am so lucky that I grew up in a family that loved and cared for me, and hearing about people's experience in here has made me appreciate what I have way more. It's like going to a third world country, if that's even the right term, but if going to a poor place and being like, wow, we have it so good. And there's not much to complain about in reality for us. Yeah. Anyway, sorry for the tangent.
No,
On to the next
no,
one.
no. Tangents are great. Like it's all like good, valuable information to kind of paint a clearer picture of who you are. And like I love that. I personally
Yeah.
really love that stuff. So thank you for sharing that. Like having someone in your people, having your family support you in what you do, that's very important to a lot of people. So like I definitely can see that, and that's awesome that you have that kind of support. And I'm assuming that when you're saying that you were getting paid $30 a month, that was related to your work in the asset store for the Unity asset store, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, so that was the start, and then after that I did VRChat commissions, but I also built and put some tools up on Patreon. And then all of a sudden it was like, yay, I've got subscribers.
Yeah.
That was my break. I was a tiny creator back then, but that was my break into a new market. Into understanding like how this even works. Why do people give you money? What are these things?
Yeah.
Not just being like I'm paying for a service, but like paying for you to build something is just was a foreign concept to me.
Yeah, honestly, like I'm right there with you. Like I very much struggled with the idea of understanding the idea of like why do people give people money, and my understanding of it is really like value. It's the value proposition that you're offering to a person. So
Yes.
a person, if you recognize inherent like objective value in something, then that alone is something that and people want to, if they want to have that or support that, they're willing to endorse that by voting with their wallets essentially. And that's something that I've learned over time from running my own small business and even being a content creator full time now. So but yeah, like value.
Learning to make someone, or learning how to like be like, hey, here's a pen, sell it to me, right? The whole sell it to me factor. And
the Wolf of Wall Street.
I don't,
I love that. I love that.
Legitimately, yes. And it's like, how do you do that? And it's like, I can't do that, right? I can never do that. But learning that if you fulfill needs, you'll get money.
Solving problems.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% right there with you. Like it's a difficult concept like to kind of wrap your head around, but kind of once you get it, you got it. So for the most part, I would say. Yeah. So that's really cool. So when it comes to using Unity, a lot of people have a lot of criticisms about Unity and how it's really frustrating to use. Do you think that's mainly within the context of using Unity for, let's say, world dev or avatar dev, like in VRChat, or do you think it's like an inherent issue with Unity as a whole, as it functions as essentially a game engine?
Well, you heard me harp on about VRChat and their monetization, so let's start there. What I've learnt in both business, in software, in people, is that the biggest breaker or maker is always money. So when you have decisions, it comes down to the monetization. And then from there, you can build further understanding by looking at everything else. But always look at the numbers. The numbers mean everything. The numbers don't lie. So for Unity, they are unprofitable. They are losing money. They are losing lots of money. They buy companies and then throw a bunch of their developers under the bus. They just fire them, as in people working out there, not Unity devs. And they'll change policies because they're struggling with money, and all of a sudden the community's up in arms and things happen, right? And we see that, we've seen that a few times with Unity. And my worry with Unity is that the popularity of it continues to fade. The developers continue to be fired. Management is too large at Unity even right now. There should be, in my humble little game devy opinion, they have too many managers, not enough programmers. The developers aren't given the time to learn the core code base, which is why we see so many Unity bugs that stick around for a while, or people don't even know how systems work. And it's like, that's Unity's problem. A lot of legacy. They have a lot of legacy problems. They're trying to fix that. They're spending time. It's like being gifted an old car that is super fast on the track, but is high maintenance. And the team is getting slowly replaced with younger and younger people, to the point where they might not even know what some parts of the engine actually do, because they've never seen it before, because it doesn't exist in modern cars. That's where Unity's at. And Unity needs to keep replacing those parts with newer parts, right? But then they have to retrofit it. And every time they retrofit something, now they've got this maintainability problem of that. And that is what we see at Unity. We see this, let's keep replacing parts. And what they're doing now is they're trying to be like, we've done this so much that the engine's bigger than what we started with. As in, like, it's outside of the hood. You know, it's like got a massive stack engine outside of the car bonnet, right? And they're there with that. And now it's like, well, now it's not road safe. The game engine runs, but it's got all these problems, and modern developers can't really work on it because of how botched together it is. So instead, what they're going to do in the next few years is actually swap over to ECS, which is like the modern way you do game dev, where it's entities and components and systems instead of game objects and references with mono behaviors. And the new way is going to be better, but all the people that in the community that have witnessed that car and how it works and have studied it, they're all about to be left in the dust and have to relearn how this new system works. So this is the problem with Unity. It's so old, it's known, but it's also not modern, so let's make it modern, but in doing that we upset the community. And that's just on the dev side. We could talk about the financial side a bit more, where because of that, Unity's losing market share. They've lost, a bunch of people because Unreal's taken them, or Godot has taken them. So now someone's got, you've got your car out there, right? The one I just talked about, that's sitting out there. And then right next to it pulls up an open source car that was built by the hands of the community, Godot. And then who are you betting on? Which one are you going to bet on? The one that is supported, backed by the community, and it will literally grow over time by the backs of people that make games? Or the other one, where it's a lot more senior people, but they keep getting replaced. And they've still got the feature set, but it's becoming, their engine's looking a little worse every year, and they've got problems. And that's how I like to think about it, is if Unity's got to compete, and to compete they might fail over time. It's like Blender with Unity. We always talk about that Godot's probably 5-10 years away from being just everything that Unity is, but more. And right now, with VR, Unity's still got the lead, but in a few years' time, they won't, and they will fail, or fall back, or they will release so many crazy new features, replace the entire engine and make it more optimized. They will lose some of their developers, but they might stay ahead. And my hope is that Godot and Unity stick around for long enough that we get a bit of competition, leads to innovation, and us as developers get better pricing models because of it, and a better understanding of both our industry, but also what to use.
Well, I still think that I do think that Unity is very much the leader when it comes to like game dev in VR, and like they still have their asset store too, which is also there's like I haven't heard of many people using that, but also I'm not really in that scene. So is that very much like a go ahead?
The asset store is actually a loss for Unity overall.
Really?
The reason they have it is so that way they can have a place where the community essentially building parts of games for other developers. So by having that, they allow junior developers, junior game creators to release a game. That's why it exists. And the monetization of that platform on Unity side, I believe is negative or slightly over positive, but it is not a crazy amount.
So it's basically kind of like Unity's way of saying, hey, we still care about the community. Look at this. So we still have this,
Yeah. It's like, we built this so you can make games quicker. But that's also a crutch. Now you're giving juniors the crutch of use everyone else's software, use all these things. And to become a senior, you need to put your crutches down and you need to run.
What do you think about like being a Unity developer, and like how hard do you think it is to become one like today?
It's the easiest it's ever been.
Really?
When I started,
Okay.
there was like barely any documentation and barely any like videos. These days, you can Google any problem and it will show up. We have ChatGPT. You can ask it what to do, what the problems are. We live in an era where information is so abundant, but never really understood by the human. And if you take the time to read the documentation, you are already in the top 5% of developers. Taking your time, reading stuff, I think the biggest thing that developers that aren't seniors, so if you're still you're getting into Unity, the best thing you can do is read documentation. The moment you do that, you're already well on your way.
Okay. What was your thoughts about the did Unity's shift and well, let's see. Let me word this properly. I believe back in it was either like 2022 or 2023, I think. Unity wanted to charge indie developers more money to have like to let people you have to, if you want to use our engine, you need to pay this much money to use our engine.
Yes.
So did that affect you at all? Did that whole debacle affect you at all?
The games market for Unity has significantly declined, as in getting a job. That was both because of that, where now all of a sudden games are no longer being made in Unity as much, but also it was because money got much tighter and developers all over the industry got let go. So there was also a flood in the market of developers, and both of those things, that was the effect that it had on me. But on the commute, like the bigger effect was people just leaving in droves over to Godot, over to Unreal. Essentially showing Unity they made a big mistake, to the point where their CEO got kicked out. You don't hear about that often. That is insane. That is a crazy thing to have happen. Incredible. Yeah, that happened.
Yeah, and like even after the apology, like that didn't really that brought like some people back, but it was the bridge was already burned at that point for a lot of people.
Exactly, and a lot of people came back not so much because of the apology, but also just because when they tried Godot, they didn't like it, and when they tried Unreal, they were like, "Well, it doesn't work for what I'm doing." It was a big waste of time. I think it was John Riccatello. He single-handedly removed hundreds of thousands of hours away from making games alone. I would consider him a big failure in regard to that, but that was not his job. His job was to make more money so that way they could become profitable. or at least show that they didn't need as much money. And sadly, that's yeah. Look, Unity's got to do something at some point because they are still losing money in an economy that does not favor free money in that regard when it comes to VC funding. Yeah, I'm worried, and being a consumer of Unity, it's like, well, at some point I better get over to Godot because these issues will never occur there because it's open. If I mess up in Basis or I mess up in or the people that own Godot mess up, people can fork it. People just make their own version that doesn't have these issues. And that's what you can't do with Unity. So to fix the problem, you need to fire the people in charge instead of the community being able to essentially remove the cancer from the body. Yeah. Yeah, I hope that was a little bit depressing, but
no, it's good. Like, some things are just real. Some things, like when you talk about real shit and like the truth about what's going on in certain ways, a lot of people don't know these things and they don't have context as to why people are upset or may feel a certain way about certain products or platforms. So I think it's important to talk about it, even if it is a little bit depressing. It's all right. Like, I don't I'm not really like, I don't get affected by that type of stuff. I prefer the real. I prefer like understanding, like the getting to the truth. So that's what I do, and I'm all about that. So that's totally okay with me. Totally okay.
Happy to hear.
Yeah. So like when it comes to like using Unity in general, like what is Unity its own language? Does it have its own programming language? I don't really see many people like programming.
Boy.
But like, is that its own thing?
Oh boy. So it's C#.
It is okay.
But
C#.
over the years, because let's go back to the engine model, literally. So we've got this engine that's been they've been retrofitting it for years, right?
Right.
So they've been retrofitting C#, which is the coding language. So it's this amalgamation of different standards and different ways of doing things on top or surrounding C#. So you program in C#, but then some things are different. Some things are the same. And developers all the time get caught out on that, and I correct so many juniors being like, don't do that, that's bad, do it this way, which is slightly different but doesn't have that performance issue because of how blah 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 works. And if we get the new way Unity's doing it, where they cut out all of those add-ons and make the engine new, we won't have those issues and it will work great. But it is C#.
Okay. Gotcha. And for people who may not know, can you explain why VRChat has had to remain on a legacy version of Unity?
They're not really on legacy, to be honest with you. They're on Unity 2022, I believe. I believe that's.
I believe it's like
2021.
Like 2020. I think it's 2022. I think it's 2022.
Yeah, give me. You know what? I can tell you in just if I just buy. I want to get this right because this will matter in my discussion with this subject. They're on Unity 2022, which means they're not on Legacy. They're on an LTS. Okay. So they got long-term support. Okay. That's where they need to be. If they're moving from, they're also on their own version of the engine. A lot of people don't know that, but they have an agreement. And this is not that widely known because, it's an agreement, but I'm going to say it. I might get yelled at later. I don't care. But, so they're on a custom version of Unity that fixes / they get to fix, I believe, or get code access to the lower level stuff. But they get, I've unplugged one of my trackers. Let me just plug that in. But they are on a custom version that allows them to do things that wouldn't normally be possible, or fixes issues that Unity don't want to fix themselves. And what that means in the future is a divergence, where the Unity we use every day in VRChat is not actually what anyone else has access to. And that's a crazy thought. But so when people tell me, why are they outdated? They're not. They're up to date. That's what I gotta say. However, let's get into the meat. How we see stuff here is rendering with what we lovingly refer to as BERP, the built-in render pipeline, or BERP. Basis uses URP, or Universal Render Pipeline. One of these are not the same. These are different things. BERP has existed for like 20 years or something, and URP has existed for like 5 or 6 years. And the difference is in how things are rendered. On BERP, there's a lot of things that could be optimized, and a lot of things you can't access with default Unity that you'd want to access as a graphics engineer. A graphics engineer can essentially take the universal pipeline and amalgamate it into however they want to render stuff in a more optimized manner. So essentially, if you come and try Basis, things just run faster out of the box compared to in VRChat, because A, it's more modern, better support for modern hardware, but also because it's a modern way of like rendering things, and it takes the learning lesson from the 20 years and builds that new engine with it. And so why is this an issue? Where does VRChat come into this? You know, you've talked about Basis and you've talked about VRChat on these two things. The problem is, at some point, that's getting deprecated. That's getting removed. And when that happens, all of a sudden, it's no longer Unity's problem, it's VRChat's problem to find a way to continue on. If that's keeping BERP in the modern Unity by literally rebuilding it, so that way it can still be used, if that's some other thing. But here's the thing, I've heard time and time again from VRChat developers that have talked about this problem with me, they're not even looking at this problem, because it's in like a few years' time that they have to deal with it. But this is massive. This is massive. This is where, like, one big thing about Unity, right, is that the asset store exists. Third-party solutions exist that you get to just use in VRChat. Like, you can go and find a 3D model on the asset store and just use it. But when they start making those textures and graphics and shaders for this modern way of rendering, and they stop making it for this, which they already have, and we're running into these issues constantly, all of a sudden, VRChat's ability to use outside stuff gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and they can't upgrade, and they can't get more performance-y things, they can't get foveated rendering, they can't use modern ways of doing stuff, they can't use eye gaze solutions to do foveated rendering. Like, they can't. There's a lot of things that they'll end up being blocked on, where we get to do that because we're on this nice new engine, and it's got problems, like things don't exactly work with each other. We have to get things custom made, right, or converted over. There's work involved here, but that's something Basis is doing, is where we're trying to push people into the modern engine. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is a lot. Like, I think it does make sense. It does make sense, I would say. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, like, so let me see if I understand this. So essentially, VRChat is in a situation where they are not behind on the current version of Unity. They're using I guess, for lack of a better term, like an enhanced version of Unity that isn't quite behind, but it's also like it's still ahead. But a time will come eventually in the future where what they're doing now won't work because of how things are changing with Unity and how they're upgrading and changing things over time. And what you were saying earlier about Unity ultimately becoming like a different engine as they like superimpose things on top of each other, and just things will stop working in like a couple of years' time.
Exactly.
Essentially?
Yeah, you're with it.
Okay.
You're with it.
Great.
And these are also reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? Is like, VRChat's not even trying to solve these issues yet. They're not thinking that far ahead because they're so wrapped up in trying to make money, trying to become profitable, because if they don't, they won't even exist to see that step where they get to actually swap over to or replace things, or like they don't. The only way to get to there is to stay alive.
Okay. So like the only way they can actually get to a point where they can, justify upgrading Unity or making or developing on that new...
Justifying the money.
Yeah, they need the money to do that. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And as we both know, laying off developers doesn't allow that. And that's what VRChat had. They laid off developers, good ones too. We're lucky that some of those developers also came over to Basis and has built some things on for Basis as well, because they care. These weren't just developers that were not doing their stuff. As VRChat said, it's very sad for them to let go of these people that are talented. And I somehow brought that back to Unity. Oh, brought it back to VRChat.
Oh, yeah, it's good. I mean, it all kind of comes together. I mean, I did distinctly ask about VRChat's current Unity version, so it's all right. It's all right. But we can definitely talk about Basis now. I think we can kind of dive into that in more detail. We've been kind of talking about it and kind of ancillary, like kind of like here and there, bits and pieces.
Here and there.
Yeah, so we can jump into it now.
The tease.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with like explain what Basis is for people who don't know what it is.
Yeah.
We'll start there.
Yeah. Okay. So Basis is a framework. I always tell people that. Get it in your heads. Alright, so we're thinking framework. What is a framework? No one knows, right? But just hold on to that word for a minute. Let's put it over here. So what Basis actually is it's a set of tools and packages. So these bundles of code and systems that when they all come together create a platform-like experience, but it's not a framework. Oh, sorry, it's a framework, not a platform. Oh no, the community's gonna be mad with me on that one. Oh no.
Yeah. Oh no, you made the biggest mistake.
But Basis essentially, it's able to be used as a way to do for example, what we're doing today, where we're just talking, we could do that on Basis, and we could host our own server, and we wouldn't get disconnected from VRChat servers, our voice latency would be lower. Why is it like that? Well, because you get to custom build Basis, you get to mold it, get the creativity out, and make it into just what you need it to do. So it could be whatever you need it to be by molding it into that. It's the clay on which we're going to build the future of social VR. And that's why it's really important. And the other companies have done this before. But here's the difference. It's completely MIT. Not a penny you need to use. You don't need to buy it. You own it forever. You grab it, you modify it, it's yours. I don't own it. I own the copyright to it, but I give a permissive license that basically says it's yours. And that's why the community support it, is because of all the things we've just talked about, all those problems. It isn't based on money. It is based on love, support, passion, creativity. It gets it out into the wider audience, and that's really cool. And I wish people, I wish people all the best of luck in whatever they create with it.
Yeah, and you were saying earlier about how VRChat is going in the direction of building a platform that is mainly for normies, and like more Roblox oriented, and how it's monetizing itself, and then all the developers who are being seemingly neglected, in terms of communication with VRChat, are not having anywhere to go. So it seems like you decided to create Basis in order to create a platform that is focused. It's centered on developers being able to build the things they want to build and to be able to supply that to whomever they want. Is that
the goal?
Is that the goal?
Developers. No, I'm not. I won't do that. What was that? Was that Windows? Like the developers. Yeah, you probably never heard.
I never heard of it. Yeah, it's okay.
The other dev friends of mine will get that one.
Yeah,
it's a clip of a dude on stage in front of just thousands of developers going, developers.
Okay.
The biggest nerd you could ever imagine doing that too. It's like, oh my goodness, the cringe. But that's what it is. My goal is to get this into the hands of developers and be like, it's your problem now. It's your thing now. You make whatever you want with it, and then you get to have normies come and use it. I'm giving you the tools, like VRChat gives the tools to their creators to build something that then gets consumed by the end user. But the difference is, you own it. You own everything about it. There is no communication errors. There is no sudden change or update or distribution issue. It is straight up, I'm giving you the opportunity to take whatever you want and put it up on Steam. Put it up somewhere. Have 100% of the glory, and I hate to use that term. I hate that. But it is yours. You get to put in effort and get out that whatever reward you want. You get to use it for whatever you want. It gets deployed in businesses because they need a solution that they both own, is secure, but is also like doesn't require to connect with VRChat servers. All these things. There's so many use cases. It's honestly incredible what's happening with it.
Yeah, I got you. That it sounds very, very interesting. However, my question about that is, why should people who aren't developers care about Basis?
Right now, you probably shouldn't. You should be passionate that it exists, but you're not going to care about what I make. You're going to care about what your favorite game developer makes with it. And that's what's really important. So there's a few people like Castle who's taking their DJ and putting it on top of Basis and then putting that on Steam. So if you want to join DJs, you can just jump on Steam, jump onto their thing, and it's all in their own ecosystem. They don't have to worry about the restrictions about what VRChat lets them do, for example. Another example is High, playing with experimental physics stuff, where like, I don't know if you saw it.
Yes,
but, like,
I did see it.
You
yeah.
can crush.
I was going to bring that up later, but yeah.
Yeah. But I'll bring it up now. Sorry.
Yeah, that's alright.
But that's, but like stuff like that, where it's like, people, it's not me showing off those cool things. It's the community. The community's crushing cubes between their thighs. Like, and it's so sick. And it's like, I would have never have thought that, but that's the entire point of Basis, is getting the creativity back into the developer's hands, so that way the end user can then experience that and be like, wow, and all of a sudden the industry changes. But when there is a monopoly on ideas and monopoly on how we do stuff, it breaks. So as the end user, you should be excited for apps that are going to use Basis, and not for me. I don't care. I care about what the developers have to say.
Okay. So Basis lets you set up your own social VR and network games with ease. That's a direct quote from the webpage that you have.
Yep.
So can you share a little bit more about that goal, about that intention, and I guess how it all started?
So, as my bio says in VRChat, IK is hard. So let's just talk about developers, right? Let's talk about the problems they face when going outside of VRChat. All of a sudden, when you exit VRChat and you became a real game developer, you have to build systems that are like, wow, we just had this in VRChat and it was great. Oh, but it doesn't exist outside of VRChat. And it's one of the reasons why people use VRChat is because it's so good at like user body experience. And what Basis does, I just give you that for free. You get to put that in your game. You get to have users have their avatars just in the game. You get to load content. You get to, have menus, settings, VR support, desktop support, all these things that literally take years to get right or years to develop. You get it by just downloading a button and putting it in your project. As well as like being able to fit hundreds of people into worlds with good performance, because I spent the time to do that for people. My goal is to make something very fundamental, stable for developers to use to make experiences even better than what they can do on their own. I am an indie accelerator, if that makes sense. You use my tooling to go fast.
Okay. So, let me think about that for a second. So Basis as a whole is ultimately a framework that essentially has all of the tools that you can just kind of build your own individual thing. But I'm having a hard time conceptualizing the idea of like going onto Steam and then going into the Basis, software, and then how that all kind of comes together.
So here's it. You'll never hear about Basis from any game. You'll just, if you look into it, they'll be using it. Just the same way that, like when you Google a game, you're not Googling the engine.
Right.
But you find out, it was made in Unreal. Light bulb.
Right, okay.
Same thing.
Okay.
So when you're on Steam, there'll just be a game, you hit play, it'll be like, do you want to use your Basis avatar? Or you might see in the credits that I'm listed. That's it.
Okay.
My goal is to empower developers to build experiences that end users would want to enjoy with. And that's hard to conceptualize, absolutely. And being the best way I can put it is it'll just be like any game where they use a third-party asset, but the core foundational system is Basis to accelerate your development. It allows you to solve complex issues because I solved them. You get the benefits of years of my knowledge.
So it's basically like it's like a house. It's a house that has like pre-built assets. You have like chairs and a table and a bed, and you can like arrange those things of how you want them to be, and also program your own things into it. Like you can buy like a picture that you want to put up on the wall or something like that. So it's using that metaphor. It's So why not call it an engine?
Because it's disingenuous. It's still using Unity. I think when games talk about, we made an engine, and I'm not going to say who it is, but people will probably know, but it's like, they're just using Unity, or they're using another engine, but they call it something on top. No, you're not making an engine. You're making a top hat. You're making a solution that just sits above. Let's be real. You're putting some software on pre-existing work. And that is how it's always been, down the chain, right? You keep going down the chain, you'll eventually end up at the bare hardware. And so why don't I call it an engine? Mainly because I don't think it is. I think it's a framework. And I would actually, the way we actually internally reference it is not by calling it a framework. It's by calling it a bunch of packages. And then we label that as the framework, right? But in reality, it's all these little segments of of like folders that individually those folders like handle things like, here's my voice, here's my networking, here's my avatar, here's my player, you know, all these little things that all together make up the basis framework, but it sits on VRChat. It's
not VRChat, on Unity. On Unity.
Yeah,
I got. Yeah. Yeah, I knew what you meant. But yeah, clarify that. Yeah. No worries. Yeah, it's Unity.
I'm gonna get back to the team behind Basis. That's not just me. And they'll be like, "So what's it like building VRChat?" I'll be like, "No." So I'm not doing that. Yeah.
Okay. So why did you call it, like, why call it Basis? Like, where did that name come from?
Could you guess? Have a guess. I want to see if you can guess.
Okay. My best guess is that it is meant to be like a starting point. So like it's like when you call something basic, it's like the initial structure of something. So like it's like it is the initial structure of what
it's
could
not
be.
Basic.
Well,
it's bases.
Yeah, bases.
So what's the difference? So I was looking for alternative words to like foundation.
Okay.
And bases showed up, and I was like, that's small. That'll work. And I want people to know first and foremost that it's not a platform. So let's use what another word for framework or platform is: basis. It is the foundational level to everything that the end user or the game developer will build on. It is the level that is there. And I because what I was having is, as you can imagine, people are like, so you're building a VRChat competitor, you're building a platform. It's like no and no, and trying to explain to people why it's different is so hard. Like even you have to, you had to ask me like, what is the conceptual difference? And we get this all the time because people are so engaged with how VRChat is and how the other software is done, that when we are given a thing that is different, we don't know. And that requires me to tell people and communicate and subtly remind people that, hey, it's not a platform. And that's why we chose Basis.
Okay. So what have you accomplished with Basis so far? And we'll see, what have you accomplished so far?
What I personally accomplished?
Well, I mean the team, the framework itself. Like what I know you've been conducting experiments. I know you've been doing test runs. I popped into one. You didn't see me at it because I was just kind of like in the background. You did see me?
You.
Okay. Yeah, I popped in once.
We record all those things and I log everything, so I saw you there. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, as you saw, I was swamped. I always get swamped.
Yeah. So popular.
And it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Every time we do one of the, so we do tests weekly, but every once in a while, we do a big old fat test where it's like, how many people can we put on one box? And when you attended was the first time that we ran out of people, and there was some crashing that didn't help, and those issues have already been solved. That's the entire reason we do the testing, right? And Basis performed really well. We got up to just under 300 people in a single lobby, and most people were still getting really high frame rates. So I'm happy. There's more work to be done. There's always more work to be done. But that's really impressive, and I'm very proud of the team and the people that have put hours and hours and hours of their free time into making Basis as strong as it is today. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by the people that have got us to this point. But so yeah, what we do in Basis, the test is like we try new fun stuff. We check to see if everything's working. We're in the process of example like rewriting our IK to be much better. So we're like testing that. We're testing like things like what are we working on next? Like converting over the pool table, trying all this fun stuff, communicating. We spend the time talking about philosophy discussions. Does this align with our vision? Does this align with what we're trying to tell the community? All these really good discussions that by the end of the meeting, I'm asleep. I'm in the corner dying. It's too much for me. I get absolutely like destroyed, but it is well worth it. And the community is what leads Basis. And I have put people in the right positions to make sure that is always the case. At least until I retire, right? But
I mean, that doesn't seem like it's going to be for a while. Like you're still quite young. Or
better not be.
Yeah. I mean, you're building something that is ultimately it's very much claiming to accelerate the growth of VR. You know, that's a pretty bold claim.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and as you can imagine, it weighs on me a lot. Like the truth is, it's not even bold. It's just like it's a tool that we're missing. You know, even just loading an avatar over the network is something that takes months of time to do. You know what? I can bring up. I'll give you a few little use cases.
Sure.
That might help solidify where we're at. So, for example, universities are where really smart people go, but really smart people want to do experimental stuff, right? They can't do it in VRChat. So, for example, we had some university students recently who reached out and were like, "Hey, we want to use Basis because we want to test social experiments about virtual reality, and we can't do that in VRChat." For a number of reasons, right? No offline capacity, inappropriateness about some of the avatars or things that could go on, you know, an uncontrolled environment, that sort of stuff, as well as not being able to write the code that they need to test things like phantom sets, or things that are experimental, implementing new devices. That's another one. Companies, right? If you're a company creating like eye tracking or face tracking, Basis is amazing because you can actually do the full stack implementation from start to end. With VRChat, you must conform to their implementation. Again, they set the standards. We do not. The community as a whole set standards, but you get to implement your own standard. And what that means is innovation. With that comes the ability for essentially to write their own drivers. So, you know, like computers where, you know, we've got this fight going on between AMD, Nvidia, and Intel to make faster and faster CPUs and GPUs, right? And with Basis, we can have that competition. We can have more than just the three competition, right? We can have actual competition from people trying to improve and build out better systems, and then those systems will then get used by developers that in the future that will financially support them, that then gets used by the wider community. And so the wider community, like the normies, get to have all these benefits just flow downstream from people talking, communicating, and improving on the work of the previous. And that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's something that can be very, very, like as a kind of a standalone experience, it seems like it could be very, very useful for a lot of people to build what they want to build with, and just build what they want to build and focus specifically on just that development process without having to work around other existing systems and processes that are already on, you know, in this case, you know, existing VR platform. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We're essentially, I'm not going to say we're doing this, but we're helping improve the industry to make it better. We're providing a voice of reason to companies that think they know what VR is and they think they know who they're targeting, but we can come to them and be like, hey, we're an open source thing. Come implement your software and see if people use it. And we can be like, or we can even just home grow our own stuff. Homebrew. We get to do that. We get to fix corporations' mistakes. We get to communicate. And I don't normally talk about this, but since we're on the subject, Basis is here, right? There's actually another group that I'm also a part of called the Open VR Working Group. And it's still very much in a foundational, early stage, but we communicate with the industry here, all over the industry, with the other developers and the other teams, and be like, hey, here's the things wrong with VR right now with your systems. Can we get them fixed? Or even better, we actually have platforms in there that we're able to communicate with. Like, hey, do you want to implement this standard we created in Basis? Or do you want to have all the same login systems so we can just log in with our ID across the entire lot? Where Basis is a foundational start, but the end goal is to help make the entire industry better, and and to do that, I need to communicate with all these people, and they need to communicate with me. They need to be on the same page. We do so much, and there's so much that we won't even talk about today that's going on in the Discord. But we are so heavily focused on making sure VR is here in 10 years.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of my guests about the future of VR, and it seems like you're at the forefront of that. That you really do want it to be around. You want to give people a reason to continue to make things for it.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing about it is that all the stuff that you're talking about, that's not really privy to the mainstream. And obviously, VR isn't really, I guess it is at this point mainstream, but I do think it's reached a saturation point of people who have VR already have it, and all people know is Beat Saber and VRChat or
Exactly.
Half-Life Alyx, and that's really all people really think of.
And my hope, and what is special about all three of those games, the creativity for all of them was crazy, right? They found unique ways of solving problems or were first to situations. And with Basis, that's what we're trying to solve. We're trying to solve the creativity part for people, so that way they can make those new and interesting experiences that people actually care about, and not to do the Hollywood thing of repeating movies every 4 years or 5 years. It's like, oh, here's the same movie that just came out already. But yeah, we won't want to redo any. We don't want any new creativity. We want to reuse existing works, and we see that in VR all the time because of the cost issues. So if we can lower the developers' cost to develop something, and we're able to improve their creativity and able to mold those two together, we get more studios, we get more developers, we get more games.
Okay. So are you basically saying? Well, I don't know if you're saying a lot of things, but is one of the things that you're saying that VR games are pretty shit right now, in general?
That's throwing a lot of developers under the bus.
Okay. I won't say that. Okay, I won't say that. I won't. Okay. Thank you for correcting me. Okay, so I'll take that back. I won't say that they're shit. What I'll say is they're not extreme. They're not very popular. I mean, when people think of VR, they think of PlayStation VR. They think of the VR2 that PlayStation put out. They think of the Index. They think of the Quest. How does Basis play into these headsets? I mean, there's also the Vive. I mean, the Quest headsets. Yeah. So
first of all,
how does that kind of all play?
It lets all of those work on the same system. So we do all the hard work to make all of those headsets work all together, as well as desktop support is just carved in right as well, and standalone, where you're just running the Quest without the PC. All of those work in Basis, and you get, as a developer, you just get all of that for free. You essentially just write your code once, and it just magically works. That's normally, porting time, where it's we're going to port the game from PlayStation to Windows, and it takes 3 years or whatever. We just do that for you. That's also solved. We do so much. And that's why it's called the framework, right? But how does it play into the wider part of that? Well, we have communications at most of the companies you mentioned that own those headsets, right? And we can communicate and make sure things get implemented right. We can talk about the problems that we have with their software, their hardware. As developers, we are helping establish communication routes where it's like Basis is so core and fundamental, hopefully in the future, that the community gets to strong arm the industry into making it what we actually want. Why is it that full body is only in one game, realistically, that actually matters? Why is that?
Because it's social,
you know?
largely.
Exactly. But it's also because it's super hard to implement. It's unsupported. Not many people have it. But we want to give it where, like, you just use bases, and as a bonus, you just get that. People get to just use full body. It's not up to the developer to add it. It's not up to the developer to spend 3 years thinking about inverse kinematics, like these hard mathematical concepts. We just solve it for you by people in the industry that care about full body, for example.
Okay. And so you're saying that, IK is basically included in the framework of Basis.
Yeah. I could go through all the things that are, but we'd be here a while.
Okay, well.
The goal, the end goal of Basis is that it's your social identity. You show up and someone's using the framework, right? Great, amazing. They get all the acceleratory things from implementing all of our systems, or having all of our systems implemented. What that also means is we now have a standardized way between multiple apps to be like, hey, I want to use my avatar from this game, but here. Or I want to import my avatar into this game. And the developer can actually do that. They can allow you to do that because Basis is the foundational thing that would then load that avatar and use that avatar. And it's up to the creative person on top of Basis to make that look how they want it to look. But that's sick, right? That's gonna be sick. I think I have so many things that I think's wrong with the industry, but I think another one is games not implementing full body, actually user presence into their games. They can't connect.
Like Pavlov, for example.
Yeah. What if Pavlov was built on Basis and you show up with your avatar? It would be a bit funky, but it would be you.
Yeah, you could basically make your own VR type game where everyone can have their own custom avatar at all times. If you wanted to make a VR shooter, I think that would make people a little bit more engaged and want to play those things more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And think that, but there's hundreds of reasons why you would want to use Basis, and that's one of them, right? There is reasons that we have 1,000 people in the Discord and 50, 60 financial supporters and people messaging me constantly. It's because they get that when, as a developer, you go, wow, that's really cool. Wait, does that mean that, it does. Oh, it means that this also works. It's and I can just, and all of a sudden it's I get to allow users to have the experience they want. I get the creativity of our avatars. I get our creativity of what the game I want to make. It's the entire reason that people develop worlds in VRChat as creators, right? Is that we want to show off an interesting or cool experience. We want to show a world. And the people I'm wanting to capture are the people that are wanting to improve the creativity of VR. And that's a very broad statement, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about what goes into the management side of things? How long has Basis? How long has Basis been around? If you can answer that first, and
I can. Yeah.
How long has Basis been around for?
Yeah, Basis has existed for a little over a year. Okay. It's not old. It's very young. It's a little infant. And that's because, that's how long it's taken. So it's taken about a year to get to this stage. A little over a year and 2 months. On the management side, I'm the creator of Basis, But then we have the pillars. I'm one of the pillars, and there's 4 of us. Let me just hide my finger. Oh, thumb, sorry. And we have Lyuma, Unix, me, and Butler. What's special about us 4 in Basis is we all have the opportunity to override another person's opinion from that group. And the goal is to keep us on this straight and narrow path, not to let us go off the path into something that we don't want Basis to become as a collective. We want the community to guide us down to where it's needed. It's why, like, so many companies struggle to even talk to some really good engineers in VR because they're a company. But because Basis is an open source framework, everyone talks to us. Everyone loves the vision. Everyone wants to have a chat, wants to give their 2 cents. We're fostering a community of hope, enjoyment, creativity. You know, I am really impressed with how little problems we've had. And I'm not trying to jinxy myself, but
oh no, I got that. I totally got that. Yeah, yeah. Wink, wink. Yeah.
Non-jinxy. Anyway. So this and management gets up to that point of like, let's go down and make sure everyone's happy and the community, you know, focused and doing their thing. But we've also had like a bad attitude, and every once in a while we get people that come out and run VRChat. They're angry with VRChat. They're like, VRChat shit. They banned me. I wanted to ban you. I was harassing people. But they banned me. And it's like, you know, you just get people that are not gonna be a part of the vision. And dealing with that is hard. But I'm lucky that I'm dealing with developers most of the time, right? I'm not dealing with the end user. My goal is not to be well known in the wider community. If I end up that way, I'll take it. But I'm trying to build something that actually solves problems instead of making problems.
Right. I mean, the people who are actually trying to solve problems are the ones who are like, instead of complaining about what's going on, you know, there are people who would rather like do something to try to make it better rather than just being, you know, in your feelings about it. But there are not many people, like there are a lot of creative people, but there are not many people who are willing to step up and to just build something that's meant to be really, really, you know, we'll say ballsy and essentially very risky because, you know, I mean, at this point, there's not much competition other than, you know, Chill Out VR, Resonite, you know, that's really it. Obviously, you know, VRChat.
All of those, it's only Resonite, I believe, that is financially actually stable. And VRChat is probably, if everything goes well for them, they may also be stable. I don't know because they don't share that it's not public information, right?
Right.
But they also could be going under, and we would never know. But yeah, sorry, I derailed us again. I like derailing.
Yeah, it's all right. No problem. So what are you largely doing? You said you're mainly dealing with developers when it comes to Basis.
Yeah.
What is your personal role? And I'm assuming it's all 4 of your main team leaders are essentially doing the same thing that you're doing, I'm guessing, or do you have specific?
We all have different roles, but we haven't assigned the roles. It's just what people are really good at. I spent ages picking the team that I have. I'm very thankful for that. So like Butler is like decentralization of authentication. We're not talking crypto, just to be clear. But we are using cryptography, which is different than crypto, okay? Just Put them in the 2 buckets.
Right.
Don't get angry. But what that is like, he's leading the effort. Oh, sorry, she's. Hard to get everyone's pronouns correct. She's leading the effort into making it so our login system works on like 5 different platforms. So what that means is we're slowly integrating and improving the space by like having tool sets that the other platforms can even use to allow you to log in once. Register once, log in once to like another platform, and then you can switch over to Basis and log in with the same account. How sick is that? Or in the future, when the other games are made with Basis, you can just log in once on that as well. And when you do that, does that also mean that potentially in the future you could just have your avatars just already exist there? That's the hope, right? Stopping the walled garden. That's something I haven't said in a while, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a weed whacker and make a good old cutout in the walled garden approach that we're so used to allow the other developers to be creative with the content that already exists as well as will exist.
And so your role in the group and everything. It was a little bit derailing.
I'm just going off.
That was a small.
Let me continue. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I'm so passionate.
I know, and I appreciate that. It's all right. Yeah.
This is probably why my throat hurts after talking at the weekly meetings, because I just like start talking about the wider picture. I tell you, that's something I'm really good at, so that's something that I do. I'm like the person in the group that doesn't have ADHD or some other related thing that makes you like lock in. I always go to big picture. My mind's always like going back up the pipeline, and that's what I do. So let's get back to it. So that's what Butler's doing. Butler's essentially making and communicating to make sure that in long term, Basis becomes something that is integrated at a low level. Then we have like for logins and so on. Then we have, and they also are very good at writing messages. So we have Butler, I would consider the happy messenger. In that he's very good at writing happy messages or also helping with legal documentation. Then we have Unix. Unix is my personal corrector. He'll correct me on everything related to how I write, as well as opinions. He'll correct me on anything in those regards. He's really good at rewriting sentences. Because as you know, my English is bad. So he's essentially my typist, and he's great like that. But he's also my angry email writer. When we have like a legal thing or an obligation to fulfill, and I need a well-written letter that basically denies them, he's who I go to. He's great at it. He's amazing at it. And he also is probably the main moderator of the Discord. After that, we have Lyuma. Lyuma is a wild card, a very good wild card. They are extremely knowledgeable and extremely ADHD. They can zone in on a problem and get it solved. They single-handedly have solved more complex issues with Basis than anyone else. They're able to just like really like dive into the deep, right? The other person is we did Lyuma, we did Butler, Unix, and me. Oh, there you go. There's all 4.
All right. So you're like the big picture visionary.
Big picture, yes. I'm the guy that dragged them all together and was like, "We're doing this,"
okay.
and then proved it. And everyone else was like, "Wow, we're with you."
All right.
And here we are.
Hell yeah. Okay, so I have a couple more questions. I do want to ask, I think 1, maybe 2 more questions about Basis. So, just to kind of paint another picture. Well, we've been using a lot of metaphors, painting on many pictures
of-
about
yes.
what Basis can do. We've been looking at different use cases for Basis and such. So, one conversation that I had, ironically, with Jinxie, was about the idea that Basis could potentially become something akin to, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, so I'm kind of getting your clarification on it. Basis could end up being something akin to an interconnected,
Absolutely.
world that you can basically have like. I don't want to say Ready Player One style type thing, but like an actual
It's
kind
not
of
that.
like
Yeah.
So it's more so like interconnected spaces for very curated experiences that isn't. It wouldn't be like through like it wouldn't be through portal hopping. It would just be through just like, or maybe it could be that way. Do you see something like that happening or?
Now that I've explained what Basis is, right?
Right.
How does that fit in? What you discussed with Jinxie, how does that fit into it? Well, here's the crazy thing, right? Now that you can if everything goes right and we accomplish 100% of our goals where you can have your avatar in someone else's app, well, from there, what's the next logical step? You start interconnecting these experiences.
Right.
And start building this end goal. This is the vision we're trying to get to, but to get to there, we have to do all of this work. We have to do this. So that's my goal right now, is keeping people focused on the mission at hand. But that is one of the major end goals, is that you can open up Basis. Let's call it not Basis, because it won't be called Basis, right? Basis as a name is for developers.
Right.
But let's say it's called the Interconnected Platform. Woo, special name. You open her up, and it essentially is a way to go between thousands of apps.
Like a repository.
How sick would that be? Exactly. And all of them share your avatar. All of them work in similar ways. Some of them might not even work in the similar way because it's an open standard. But to get there, we have to create, and improve the vision and the industry.
Okay. And people like Castle are kind of paving the way for that by essentially
Absolutely.
building VRU standalone. So
Yes.
I've seen a little bit about that. What's your thoughts on that?
Me and Castle go way back. We've worked together on a bunch of things. He's not many people know, but Castle's I don't know how much he likes saying it, but I'm gonna say it and he can hurt me later. He worked on Black Ops and the other crazy games like Subnautica.
Oh yeah. He actually mentioned that when I interviewed him. His interview
Cool.
his interview hasn't come out yet because I am terrible at releasing things last year. I was really bad about that. So, but yeah, I actually did interview him. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying. But yeah, I did interview. I did interview Castle, and he actually did talk about that.
Yeah. So you've heard about Basis quite a bit then.
Oh no, I actually didn't hear about Basis. He actually didn't mention Basis at all, to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll let him know.
Yeah.
He's in trouble.
Yeah.
So he's one of the first cases of a self-sustaining community that will use Basis in the capacity it was made to be used in, where Basis is not the center point. It's the VRU, powered by Basis. I would even say empowered by Basis to do what he needs it to do to create the experiences he needs to create. And that's so sick. And he's proven it. It works. Now he's going to take it to the next stage, and then the next stage, and before you know it, he'll be very happy with it, and people will be showing up for DJ events, and none of them will know that it is underlying running on Basis. That is the end goal. It is just seamless. Yeah.
So I do have one more question regarding Basis. I know you've been running stress tests on I think the servers. Is that more or less correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
so my question is, You had like around almost 300 people in one space, and people were still getting pretty good FPS levels at that point.
Right.
Isn't the
Yeah.
reason for that due to, well, again, I haven't been to all of them, so I'm not 100% on this, but isn't the reason due to the emptiness? So like it's more of like a very standard basic like space that you all are inhabiting. Like the one time I went there, it was just like it was kind of like this very desert looking space.
Yeah.
Very simple,
But-
very very basic, like nothing
Yeah.
massive. Would that be the
Crazy,
main reason
right?
why you're able to
But-
get so much?
But I'd actually tell you, like, hey, it had real-time lighting. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice
Had
that
shadows?
actually. I didn't notice that. No.
You didn't notice that?
No.
Yeah, but like we have shadows on in that world. Like it is rendering more than what you do at VRChat, and we have more features on than VRChat. Like, and it's maybe not a visually technical world, and that's kind of the point. And you're absolutely correct. It's pretty fast to render. You can render that on your mobile phone. That was the entire point, right? But in VRChat, you tell me, when you have 80 people in a world, is it the world lagging or is it the 80 people?
The 80 people.
Right. So
Yeah.
in Basis, when we put 80 people in a world, what's going to be the thing? The world or the avatars?
The avatars, most likely.
Yeah. So using that logic, we can say the world basically doesn't matter. As long as you have an optimized world for testing, it's what we're testing is not the world. We're testing how many people can you put in a world before it starts both lagging and crashing. And we found those numbers, right? We found them. They exist. And we're making improvements, and we have made many improvements, and we're almost ready to do another test. And internally, we've tested up to 1,000 people in a single world, right?
Wow.
The question is, can we make those people real? Can we put 1,000 headsets on people? But to do that, we need 1,000 developers, which don't exist. Which is why I've been extending the open hand to communities that would like to come try Basis. Because I would like them to give feedback to me, give feedback to developers, and give feedback on, like, hey, can we do this? My goal with the large population is not just to be a wow factor, but it's again to be more creative. If the more performance I can squeeze out of Unity and out of my code, the more that those performance benefits go directly down the line to the developer that's gonna make an app that is gonna be like, hey, I want to do this crazy thing, it's going to cost this much performance, but if I use Basis, it's actually less, so they use it because it's more optimized, and then that means the end user gets a slightly better optimized experience. I am a network engineer. I'm also, I've talked about graphics, I optimize stuff in that regard, but these days, most of my time is spent optimizing code, and my goal with Basis is that you can have 1,000-person lobby with your avatar the way it is, and it will just work. It may not, it's probably not possible to do that without reductions and systems in place and many bits and bobs of code, but we've tested up to 1,000, and it's about 40 FPS at the moment when it's doing that. But when you start switching out to other avatars, it will get worse, and there is lots more to do. But Basis is optimized, and one of the reasons for that is because, remember how I was talking about the engine? We're on the fast new engine that is faster. We get much more modern ways of rendering, much more optimizations that VRChat can't do. Yeah, we're like this close. We're like this close to having iFoveated rendering, where you just render, the much smaller area, and you'll essentially double your frame rate, like kind of things. We are creative, and we have the ability to fix these problems. So let's fix them and obtain the user experience that we want.
Yeah. I mean, that all sounds really, really cool. Very, very interesting stuff. It's actually really cool to be like to act. I wouldn't say to be a part of that, but to know about it and to be involved in it. Maybe like kind of like in a very kind of a satellite like way. Like, oh, like I know about this now and I know more about it. And so if people, so like if people don't have any developer experience, would Basis like as a framework be accessible to someone who has like little to no experience?
We're writing documentation. Woo! Right, woo! So documentation's really annoying. For many developers don't write it, but we are lucky to have people in the community that are writing documentation. So in the future, you can come in with barely any Unity experience and follow the steps into creating something you want. It's at the end of the day, everyone's got to start somewhere. Could be Basis is where you start.
Okay, cool. That's really exciting stuff. Like that sounds like something that I would want to like look into. Like I've been kind of very vaguely thinking about like, oh well, what if I wanted like an actual like world where I would have my my podcast, and that's very specifically that. You know,
imagine never getting kicked from it, never having like down issues. Like you don't have those issues. All you have to worry about is power and your internet for your stream, right? Reducing the variables is like a big thing and one of the another consideration. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Awesome. All right. So I have a couple of more questions for you. So, where would you like to be in 2 years? And I don't mean in a physical sense. I mean more so in a goal-oriented sense. So where would you like to be personally in 2 years from now?
The community keep telling me that I can't have kids yet because I've got to finish Basis.
I mean, yeah.
so let's say that I that's the route that we go down where I don't have kids.
Okay.
Where do I want to be? I want the time and effort I'm putting in now to pay off, and to see people run with what I make and make amazing things. To have the community embrace the work I'm doing. For people to financially continue to support. For no major drama in the community. For people to get along. To have fun. Communicate. All the standard stuff. That's really important to me, is people being on the same page, people still having the same vision, and me not upsetting people. I hope I've learnt enough now where I can do resolution conflict and deal with my own problems before even looking at the community and how they handle stuff.
Okay, yeah. And what inspires you?
What inspires me? Can I say the cop-out answer?
I mean, if you want to do
community.
If you want to do the cop-out answer, sure, yeah, that works. I'll let you have that one. That one is yours. You can have that one. Yeah.
You'll put that on that when I ask this again. Make sure I stipulate that they can't say community as the answer.
Yeah.
But I'll give you another answer with that community. But more than 2 years, I'm a Christian, so my just be clear, most of my friends are trans. They're all everything under the sun, right? I'm not against any of that stuff. I'm very open and friendly, and but my Christian beliefs are something that's knitted into the fabric of my being, and how I act and how I respond to people. I try to be straight up like Christ, and that's a big part of who I want to make sure I still am in 2 years' time.
So you said you wanted to. You said community was your cop-out answer. So what inspires you is your groundedness in your religious.
Be like Christ.
Oh, got you. Okay, got you. Okay. So it's your groundedness.
Big part of my life.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I got you.
I don't want to be famous. I don't care about money, and I suspect I'm one of the only people that in VR that isn't just trying to get rich quick. And I hope that I stay like that. I hope in 2 years' time I look back and I'm like, yeah, I'm still the same person I am. Everyone changes, right? And you need to make money to live. But my hope is that we're able to build Basis in a way where it's sustained by people that making shitloads of money off it, that are like, you want a few bucks? Here you go. Have some money for dinner. And that's what and I think it's because of that, in the opportunities that God's given me, that we're here. The fact that I can help people in need as well. Like, another thing, right? Another reason people care about Basis, there's lots. As you can imagine, I talk to a lot of people, and hearing everyone's perspective is amazing. It's amazing to hear what people have to say. But another big one is, like, what happens if the US legislation around trans rights disappears? Essentially, it becomes like where it's a thing that you can't have, and companies must not do any trans-related things. Well, Bases can be taken by the community, and they can still have that. They can have a safe space, and being able to be like, I'm making a backup in case things go wrong is really good, right? Giving the people opportunity. And it's like, even like, maybe I'm also helping get some of the sex issues off VRChat. It's like, just go do it on your own platform. Go do it on on a Basis-based platform. Go be a degenerate over in the corner. Like, getting it away, right? Like these things, like, I can potentially help solve cultural and larger issues that are outside of our control. Yeah.
I like how you think. I like that you're very big picture. You're very much about, like, what can I do to actually make a difference in people's lives? How can I actually, like, be like, motivate people to do bigger and better things and be better people.
To do good.
Yeah. I share that motivation in a lot of what I do as well. My community knows that about me too. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Hell yeah. All right. So my last question for you is, if you could leave any matter of advice for, it could be about anything that we talked about, it could be something that we haven't talked about.
Yeah.
What piece of advice would you like to give people who are listening and watching?
I'll give the same advice that I gave on the previous podcast I was on, which is communicate. Communication in all things is most important above all else. It's how I've got to where I am today, and it's where I will continue to go, is improving my communication. It's only, you can be the best developer in the world, but if you communicate like dog shit, no one's ever going to want to be anywhere near you.
Yeah, true. That's true. That's true as fuck. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so with that out of the way, where can people find Dooley? My Discord handle. My Discord handle is Dooley, literally. So that's pretty sick. I got that. But I think Twitter should also be Dooley or Dooley123. I can't remember. Luke Dooley. That's
Luke Dooley. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Luke Dooley.
That's my real name.
Okay, well there you go.
Luke Dooley. Thank you so much for correcting me. It's been ages since I looked. But the other one is BASISVR. If you search BASISVR, you'll find all of the links. Will you be including the links for that?
I will be. It'll be right at the bottom. Don't even worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we have a Discord that has about 1,000 people in it at the moment, where if you would like to join for any of the tests, we try to make them semi-interesting. I'm sorry if you get bored, but they're fun. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you for sharing. Like, we're gonna make sure that people know how to reach you and are able to reach you, either in the description as well as like it'll just be presented like in the video as well down below. All right, so now you know where you can find Dooley. If you'd like to find me, you can find me on Twitch. If you're watching this by YouTube, you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Nepherti with 2 eyes. You can also find me on Twitter at Nepherti with 2 eyes. If you're watching live on Twitch, thank you for watching live. If you want to check out my YouTube, you can find me on YouTube at Nepherti with 1 eye. I know it's a little confusing, but that's the nature of, you know, not getting the name that you want, but you know, it is what it is. So Nepherti with 1 eye on YouTube. And if you'd like to know more information about the podcast, about the guests that I have on, about the releases of videos and updates, you can receive all of that information very easily through the Twitter account, which is at Sweet Talking Pod. So Sweet Talking Pod, just like how it's spelled, how it's said. So you can find that account there, very, very easy. And if you are at all interested in supporting what I do and also hearing the additional conversation that I'll be having with Dooley after we wrap up the main recording of the podcast, if you'd like to hear that conversation and, you know, in turn support me as well, you can go to my Patreon at patreon.com/Nepherti. And there are a number of different tiers, and you can subscribe starting at just $1. So feel free to check that out if that's something that's interesting to you. And for those of you who are watching live and also through YouTube, we're going to go ahead and move on to the post conversation with Dooley. But before we do that, I do want to kind of wrap things up for those of you who are watching on YouTube. And thank you all for tuning in. Really do appreciate you all supporting what I do, the content that I create. Thank you so much for being here. And if something that we talked about resonated with you, please be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, share it with people that you know. And I would really, really appreciate that. And even just watching it really does help. So thank you so much for all that you do. And for those of you, again, who are watching, we're going to be jumping into the post conversation in just a little bit. But before we do so, I want to thank Dooley for being an awesome guest. Thank you so much for nerding out with us tonight. I really appreciate that. This is definitely the most detailed and nerdy conversation about VR that I have had with any of my guests ever. So thank you for that. I learned a lot. And I'm really looking forward to what you're doing with Basis and what you and your team are doing with Basis and other developers that will be jumping on with you. So thank you so much for taking the time. And, you know, being from Australia, like you could have chosen a different time. You could have told me that like too early in the morning is too early, like 11 a.m. is too early in the morning for you. Like you could have, but you were okay with that. So thank you for being chill and sitting with me at pretty early in the hour back in Australia.
Yeah, it's 12 now. It's almost 1 in the. You know, it's getting close to 1 in the afternoon. So
yeah.
It's well and truly time that I'd be up by now.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm very glad. Thank you so much for being on. I'm glad it wasn't too much of a trouble for you. All right. So for those of you who are tuning in, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Sweet Talking Podcast with me, your host Nepherti, and I've been joined by Dooley. And again, if you were inspired or something about this conversation really resonated with you, please feel free to leave a comment and leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really, really appreciate that. And we do these live on Twitch all the time, approximately every 2 weeks. If you're on VRC.TL, they are announced there as well. So if you are a VRChat user, I do put the announcements of when we're doing the podcast up on that page. That's done by Woody. And yeah, if you want to tune in, we do these live on Twitch approximately every 2 weeks. I try to stick with that. But in the meantime, I appreciate you watching on YouTube and those of you who are watching live. And of course, I look forward to seeing you all again in the next one. So until then, thank you all so much for being here. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. 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 Hello, and... Oof, hold on. We'll do that again. We'll do that again.
Can I have a second? My
Oh.
lenses. I can't even see my hands anymore.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem.